Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We're into the middle of March. My name is Brian Vitale. We've all of a sudden have a ton of games thrown on us that we're all working through. Joining me today, I've got Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Josh Torres.
It is the last week before Jack Garland, the video game.
And Chow Min Woo.
You're not here to kill me, is it? Because if you add an S to my name, it is Chaos.
Yeah, there you go. Chaos Min Woo. So we know that several of us are still working our way through Elden Ring. Obviously, that's still a big release from a few weeks back. But we've talked about that for a few weeks in a row on the podcast. So we'll probably table discussion on that for now. Well, obviously, we'll readdress it later in the year. Maybe if we find a good opportunity to speak to it, before that point, we will. But we're going to be talking about a couple other games that released around the time of Elden Ring that we haven't had a chance to, as well as some other games that we're working through. We've got a ton of release dates from this week to both for new games and for like DLCs and expansions to existing games. As happens every year when we get to like the March-April timeframe, everything about the holiday season and those summer months, it all starts falling into place into like what we can sort of expect. Kind of like the people getting their ticky-tack pre-summer news out of the way before we get the bigger drops at the E3 or whatever replaces E3 now timeline. The first game that we're going to talk about is one that we kind of briefly mentioned in passing around the release of Elden Ring, as has kind of been this game's fate, I feel like, in the larger gaming discourse. And that is Horizon Forbidden West. So we obviously did write a review for this for the site. Quentin was able to put that up for us back when that game launched. We have not been able to get Quentin on the podcast, just the timing just doesn't work out too well. But we do have Adam here, who has made his way over to Horizon Forbidden West in lieu of Elden Ring. So while all of us have been enjoying and having ample opportunity to talk about our times in From Software's newest game, we wanted to make sure that we gave Horizon a fair shake. And I'll just, at this point, hand it over to Adam.
Oh man, the way you phrased that was savage to Horizon a little. It's like, well, I guess we got to give our due time to Horizon, but it's not because that's kind of been the weird thing about Horizon. It's not a first time thing for Horizon. Like Horizon 1 released at a time, and that I think in that month when it came out, it was like Breath of the Wild came out, Nier Automata I think was coming out that month as well.
If I remember correctly, the original Horizon released like end of February 2017, and then the Switch came out like a couple of weeks later, or like a week or two later, with Zelda as a launch title. And then I think Nier Automata, it kind of was straddling with the Japanese and English release right around that time as well. So
yeah. I know the Japanese release was in February for Nier Automata, and
then there was like the English release, and then the PC release was a little bit later. It was kind of a weird staggered thing.
Yeah, and even then, the Japanese release of Automata had English in it already. So
that's how I played it.
I actually think it's a superior version. They don't have to deal with censoring names in the Japanese version.
There was literally no difference if you played it in English, Chow. You do
know
No.
There is one thing. There is John Paul and Satchwraith. His names get beeped in the English version.
Huh?
That's right. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I don't know if there was some sort of weird legal thing there that they couldn't actually say it. That's weird.
Yeah. So I was looking over the releases from early 2017 to see if I could pile on because I'm mean.
Yakuza was around there
to see like what I could add. Like, what else released around Horizon Zero Dawn? Do you remember? I completely forgot this game launched. Do you remember Super Mario Run? The auto runner, I forgot that game existed. It also released in North America early in, at least for Android, in March 2017.
When did Yakuza 0 release in English? Wasn't that like January 2000?
Yeah, that was January, along with Gravity Rush 2. Another game that came out in February. Yeah, 2017 was nuts. Another game that came out in February 2017 was Neo 1.
I think Tales of Berseria was around there too.
Jesus, 2017 was fucking weird. Now that you guys are reminding me, that's very packed. But I mean, here we are, Horizon Forbidden West. This is one of the first things they announced alongside with the PS5 when they finally had that debut event, and they had that CG trailer for Horizon 2. I'm really interested to see how. Like, this has been a weird conversation around this game because it released so close to Elden Ring, and they both have different flavors open world and how they apply it into their games, and they can both exist in the same space. But a lot of the conversation has been they can't, and it's like that's insane. You're crazy.
They kind of inevitably seem to butt heads. Like, and one has to somehow like dominate over the other, but they kind of.
I do want to qualify before we get too far into this that like I played and enjoyed Zero Dawn. I played it when it came on PC and wrote the PC impressions piece for it, and I actually enjoyed it enough that I kind of looked past some of the technical difficulties that PC release had. So I am looking forward to Forbidden West. I want to say I did.
Are you just waiting for the PC version?
Is that so? Just like it's a bit weird comparison between Elden Ring is PC version. Yeah.
Well, PC. Like I tried to at least earmark a little bit of space in my review for Elden Ring, saying like, yeah, the PC version's not stellar. But yeah, I didn't mean to go so heavy on the I guess we got to talk about Horizon now because I am legitimately interested in this. I know it's a little bit less like we still get conversations like this isn't an RPG. It's it's just an action open world game with skill trees or whatever. But Adam, I think you had some opinions on that. Maybe we'll get to that. So just talk about your time with Forbidden West so far.
Yeah, so Horizon Forbidden West, it takes the more uniformly typical open world like structuring, and it's basically a very, very polished version of that. It's not doing anything new or novel in terms of like the overall structure of the game. So people will compare it to Ubisoft open worlds or other open worlds, and it is I've played Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I haven't played like many of these Assassin's Creed titles, but I have played Valhalla, and honestly, in terms of just like structure of the game, it is very similar in terms of exploring zones. There's a lot of different icons on the map that are like different types of events that you can go to. There's lots of side quests, lots of things to collect. So that's just the type of game it is. I haven't played Elden Ring, but there are a lot of cinematics and things like that. So it's sort of that flavor of game where I imagine, Elden Ring is not a cinematic heavy game. That's just not the type of story it tells.
Most of the cinematics in Elden Ring are, I'm just letting Adam know this because I don't think you haven't played a Souls-like from FromSoft. You've only played.
I have played like a handful of Souls-likes, but not a From game.
Yeah. So
I should clarify. I have played Armored Core, so I have played From games.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Most of the cinematics in I'm speaking very generally here. Don't nitpick on them. What about this? Most cinematics in most From Software Souls likes are ahead of boss fights usually.
Right. But yeah, my point is that it takes basically an established structure and is polishing it to a mirror sheen. That's what it's doing. So if you've tried Zero Dawn, and you didn't care for like it's like structurally like what it was, then Forbidden West isn't really much different from that. Now, if you tried Zero Dawn and maybe you didn't quite like things like the quest design or the melee combat, or maybe some of the like visual things, like I know facial animations in the original game aren't stellar, and things like that, or maybe the UI, like inventory management and things like these sort of things that can pile up to maybe affect your enjoyment of the game. Forbidden West improves in a lot of ways. I know I just listed them, but let me list them again.
Like before you go into that, like this is the first PS5 like the first game you've played on your PS5 since you got it when?
Yeah. Yep. I got my PS5 in September of last year, and it's been sitting in a box for half a year.
Adam, I forget. Have you played 7 Remake, and have you played the Yuffie thing?
I played the original PS4 version of 7 Remake, and then I was waiting for the PC version, and then the PC version seems iffy. It's probably fine for my taste. Like I just kind of want to play the Yuffie DLC and whatever, but I'm not in a hurry. I'll play it before the second part comes out. Maybe it'll come out on Steam before then. I don't know. I will play games on Epic, like I played Neo: The World Ends With You on Epic, but if it comes out on Steam before I get a chance to play it, I'll probably get it there. Anyways, so Horizon Forbidden West, it's a direct sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. it's nothing weird about that. It literally just continues the storyline. Forbidden or Zero Dawn definitely did not conclude like 100% conclusively there. But in terms of like improvements, it makes improvements across the board. Like melee combat is a hell of a lot better. I don't know if they took like tips from like God of War or whatever. It's got a somewhat typical like heavy attack, light attack system, but it does add in a few twists and turns in terms of how it works with like your spear's abilities, in terms of like how it can energize and de-energize, and how that affects like the status of the person or the thing you're fighting. So melee combat is a lot better. The quest design, there are a lot of quests in this game. Like I probably come across like 20 or 30 or so, roughly in that range. And these quests in the original game, the quests were more like very clearly like go over here and kill this thing and report back. Pretty bare bones, pretty typical. But now like there's each quest has a kind of a mini story involved with it that's a little bit more involved. There's a lot of pretty well done cinematics that are in the quests. Like it's not just the rote animations of models or whatever. Like they put some time into like how these little quest stories are done, so they're massively improved. Even small UI things in terms of like how to manage your inventory is all much nicer to work with in Forbidden West. This is something I almost have to remind myself. Remember how I know some of you have played Zero Dawn. In Zero Dawn, there were like these there were like not loot boxes. Do you remember those?
Yeah,
those were weird. This game doesn't have those, which is good, because those were just
they just call them like supply caches or something.
Yeah, you'd like buy a cache, like you could find them or buy them and then like open it.
You got like one freebie from every shop or something. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, that they got rid of that, which is good. I think it was kind of one of those just didn't add a lot. It just made it not clean. Yeah. And there's also other improvements like traversal. There's a few things. Early on in the game, you get basically a grappling hook, and this is used for like elevation in terms of getting up higher. I'm not a big fan of some of the climbing stuff in this game. It kind of reminds me of like those Uncharted climbing sequences, where it's just kind of like sidle along a ridge to the next ledge to grab onto, and then you go through the sequence of just from jumping from ledge to ledge. That stuff is honestly one of the things that did carry over from the original game that I'm not really a fan of. But there is some improved traversal in terms of the grappling hook. It's called the polecaster. It helps you kind of get around more smoothly. I've actually gotten far enough in the game where I can now mount one of the flying robots to fly around anywhere, which is pretty darn cool. There's a glider as well that you get.
Those are both like new to this game, because I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, in the original game, you could mount like some of the robots and ride it like a horse, which is cool and fine. But now you have like the grapple hook, you have the glider, inspired from Breath of the Wild or not. It's just nice if you're up like on a really high ledge and you need to move somewhere else. You don't have to worry about like, how do I get down safely? You can just jump and glide. So there are a lot of improvements like that. The open world is really pretty dense. I think I mentioned this not too long ago, but this game is similar to Assassin's Creed Valhalla in its structure, but Valhalla has a lot more like empty space in between settlements. And so you can you run from like one settlement in Valhalla to the other, and then there's just like fields of, grass and grains and weeds and whatnot, which honestly they look great, but they're just kind of empty and vast. You don't really do a whole lot there. Where this game is much more dense. There's a lot more like forested areas, cliffy areas, settlements. And so I feel like it meets a good balance in terms of stuff to do and for stuff to find. Even if it does get a little bit into the checklist nature of things, I don't think it's as egregious as Valhalla. I'm making that. I know that comparison might seem weird, but it's interesting though,
because like a lot of people are obviously comparing Elden Ring to Horizon, and they're very different approaches to the framework of an open world game or RPG. And then you have like almost like a different impression because you haven't played Elden Ring. So you're like, well, I'm comparing this to Valhalla, which is apparently not your taste. It's just interesting.
Well, I think Valhalla and Forbidden West share a lot in common, and people have said, that Forbidden West is a Ubisoft style open world, and I would agree with that. They're very similar. Now, the one thing about Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn that I enjoy most about these games, and I know it's not for everyone, is the combat. I'm actually really fond of the combat in these games. There's a lot of it's got a more of a ranged focus. You have several different types of bows. You get like spear throwing, you get bombs, you get traps, and I'm going to make another comparison to Valhalla. I wasn't expecting to make this many, but the thing about Valhalla that honestly I kind of detested is the combat in that game for a few reasons. But the main one is in Valhalla, you just mow down so many like mindless, stupid mooks that you just like in any combat encounter in that game, there's just like literally 40 of these guys that you're just like mowing through, and it gets really old really fast. Whereas in Horizon, basically just take that density and reduce it a lot. You're fighting a lot fewer things, and they take more time to beat. So you do have to have some patience. But you're just this sort of encountering like you like last night I was playing and I encountered a stormbird, which is basically this gigantic bird, and it can take a good, let's just say 10 minutes to beat one of those things, which, a 10-minute encounter, may not sound great, but that's like the only enemy in the area. And once you beat it, you're free to explore. But I just think that that's like kind of way more interesting in terms of like the pacing of combat in this game. Plus things like, there's a lot of things like various elemental abilities and statuses. There's shock, there's acid, there's fire, there's psychic, I forget what it's called. And when you're attacking these enemies, especially the big ones, they have, pieces of them that you want to attack in certain ways, that whether that can be good in terms of getting certain types of loot, or perhaps even just being able to beat them because it maybe reduces their capabilities. So I just kind of like that styling of it. And it's, there's like the variety of weapons that you have on hand. It's just very different from the usual, heavy attack, light attack, comboing type combat that you find in a lot of games. You don't really do combos, right? You're just using the various types of weapons in various ways.
Yeah, I mean, you're primarily an archer. It's not like you're doing Devil May Cry combat.
And there's also a couple of smart, like, I don't know if you want to call this a tutorial, but dotted throughout the game, there are these melee arena pits that basically, when you do them, it's one of those checklist things that you do in this game, but they each teach you like a different basically strategy for melee combat in terms of different combos and different things you can do. And I've legitimately like jumped into one of these pits, and then it like kind of throws you in a battle where you have to do a certain type of ability. I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And I find myself using it like back out in the open world in terms of, something I didn't realize I could do in terms of, like, for example, you can do like a armor breaking 3-hit combo, which is light, heavy. And then if you hold down a button and then release it in such a way, you do what they call a half moon slash, which sort of like slides you closer to the enemy and sort of around them, and you can kind of follow up with a second combo. And then if you hold a different button, you can jump off of them and basically finish the combo with you jump off of them, time slows down, bullet time, shoot an arrow at them. And there's some cool stuff you can do with that. It's way improved over the first game, the first game's melee combat is like really awkward.
You only have to really use it against humans.
How far are you into this sequel?
Oh, okay. So I have basically, when I was playing this game, there's different approaches to playing an open world game, right? Some people like to kind of like exhaust the exploration parts of it and then sort of like follow the story. But Horizon does have a few things that are like gated in terms of eventually partway through the story, for example, you get the rebreather for swimming underwater longer. And rather than me exploring and noting like, oh, here's a bunch of underwater areas that I can't explore, here's another thing that I don't have the tool for it yet, like, let me just kind of proceed through the story and kind of unlock these things first, and then I can do some exploring without to worry about, do I have the capability to do this yet? There's not a lot of that, but there's a little. But I wanted to get to like the later encampments because they have better gear and stuff. But I got to the point where I'm at the final story mission of the game, but I somewhat mainlined my way there. So if you look at like my world map, there's like a big world map, but you can actually kind of see my path through it based on what's explored, and like it's just kind of a little line snaking through this map, and like, all right, there's a bunch of other stuff I haven't done yet, and I had like 20 quests that I hadn't completed, and so like, all right, let me explore a bit, and I kind of needed to do that anyways because like I need to get better gear, I need to level up a bit, and things like that. So that's kind of when I'm in the process of it now. I think I'm around 50 hours in the game, which I probably could go ahead and just beat the game now if I wanted. But I'm like, I can explore a little bit longer. Why not? One other thing I do want to mention: this game is very, very well. Like, it's very thorough and very polished in many aspects. So I'm near the end of the game, and I've actually jumped back to some of the quests that are much, much, much earlier in the game. And these quests, like I said, they have like their own little mini stories. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of NPCs. They will reference things from later in the game. I've kind of been surprised at how many times they do that. Like, for example, actually, I don't want to spoil anything, but maybe I'll just leave it at that. It does a pretty good job at where like the quests, they feel like they're well integrated, and it's not like, oh, I could have done this 30 hours ago and it feels like it's from 30 hours ago. Like, oh, they're actually referencing things I just did, even though I could have done this a long time ago. And I'm also kind of wondering, I wonder if I sort of skip some of the mainline stuff and then try to do like a late game quest, how the dialogue might be different if I hadn't like seen some of the main story things yet in terms of characters. I remember and
when
events.
I was playing Greedfall a few years back, I think the last companion you get is Afura, the tech lady. And I remember doing an early quest like with her in the party, which I feel like 99% of people would do this quest before they get her. But then like if you have her in the party, she has her own bespoke dialogue. And it was something that I really praised that game for, was really involving companions in the quest. I know it's a different style of game than Horizon, but similar sort of thing where it's like, hey, there's the developers had the wherewithal, is that the right word? The cognizance to say like, okay, some players are going to approach this not in the maybe most likely or expected order of events, so we're going to account for that and make sure that what we do have, it doesn't feel like if you're going back to the first zone to do a side quest that you put off, that it feels like you're going back in time. They're trying to make it so that your narrative is so contiguous. So that's really cool, I think.
Yeah. I won't get into anything else because of spoiler reasons. And this game's story, so the first game had, the twist in the first game, it's not really a twist anymore, but the twist in the first game was basically you are in post-apocalyptic, like Western United States. I forget where it was like Colorado. And that's like, I guess there's another twist about who Aloy is in the first game, but the story in Forbidden West, there are some pretty big twists early on that haven't. Now, I'm pretty good at avoiding spoilers, so maybe these are out there and everyone knows about them, but I just haven't seen them other than my experience with the game itself. But there are some pretty kind of bizarre, kind of crazy, zany twists in this game. I would say it's entertaining. I don't know if it's good, but it's entertaining enough for me to wonder, like, I wonder what they're going to do with this, with some of the story offerings here. So now let me talk about some things I'm not so much of a fan of. I already mentioned some of the climbing sequences. This game, in the first game, had it too. There are just some sequences, like in some of the dungeony areas or some of the in spots on the world map where it's like, all right, we need to get to this point on this cliff over here. You got to climb and do like this sort of linear path where you climb from ledge to ledge and jump from ledge to ledge to get to the spot. And I think the way Brian kind of put this before, I think you literally said this when you were talking about your experience with Zero Dawn, is it barely qualifies as gameplay. And I agree with you, because it's just kind of, you're just kind of going along a linear path, pressing X a few times. It's just like what you see.
It's usually just a vehicle to like occupy your hands on your controller while some narrative, some dialogue, or Aloy, I'm guessing, speaks to herself and like, all right, we got to make sure
that was actually the next thing I was going to mention. I think this is one of the biggest comparisons people make between Elden Ring and Horizon, is that Aloy speaks to herself constantly about everything and will basically reveal any sort of like task or slight puzzle you have to do immediately. Like, oh, I need to do this, or oh, I found this energy cell. maybe I can do something with it, or oh, I need to get up there, I need to do something with this crate, or oh, I need to find, even in a quest phrasing, like this person wants me to do this, I wonder if I should meet with them over there.
With all the accessibility settings they have in this game, that they don't just have a toggle.
I looked, I didn't see a toggle for like self narration. And
I was actually thinking, like, what would that be called? Like, you know, propensity to speak to self, high, medium, or low. I don't know.
I think if I remember
helpful narration or something, or helpful monologue. I don't know.
If I remember correctly, there actually has been a patch to reduce some of the times. I think I saw this. I don't have it in front of me. I guess when the game launched, Aloy would talk about a lot when you pick up items. If she couldn't fit them in her pouch, she would send them to her stash. And she'd be like, oh, I'll send this to my stash. I can grab it later. And then apparently that was one of the things they actually toned down a bit, where she doesn't say that every time.
Don't forget me.
It's possible. That's actually another UI thing that's really nice, is that in the original game, I forget exactly how it worked, but some of the ways that stashing worked and your inventory worked was more annoying, where here you can it's much more convenient to how you grab things, and there's no like over encumbrance or anything like that. You can just pick up everything, and it's maybe it doesn't make sense that Aloy can hold on to like 17 bows or whatever, but it actually works out. It's actually not too bad. But yeah, the self narration of Aloy is it's honestly I've like, there's been times I just speak to myself, I'm like, oh come on, like you didn't need to tell me that. Like sometimes it is obvious, and sometimes there have been points where her muttering has like genuinely been useful, but it didn't even give me time to like find it myself. It's like, I need to get up to that cliff. I'm like, oh, I didn't even see the cliff yet. Because she just muttered it, but it's just kind of like, I wish you could tone it down, or they would tone it down. There,
I guess
but
that's
otherwise,
it's like it speaks to like a larger conversation, like in modern game design, right? Because there's a lot of big like like AAA games that like have to like market this as the lowest common denominator of like, okay, well, we got to make sure that no one feels like they're lost in this game, or we got to make sure that like we want them to like keep on moving forward no matter what. We don't want them to get stuck or hung up like on anything. We just want to try to make it as smooth as possible, almost to the point that like the game is borderline playing itself, if you know what you mean. Like you guys were just talking about it, like the what would be qualified as quote unquote platform segments. Like that's not really a platform.
I'm trying to remember. I know I've played a game. Maybe it's one of the Uncharted? I forget. I know I've played a game that has this sort of like, you're in a room or some zone and you have to like somehow find your way through it. And I know I've played a game where if you like if the game notices that you've been wandering for 5 minutes and haven't progressed, like a little UI thing will pop up like,
yeah, Uncharted does that. I think
for a clue, and then you press it, and then the main character would talk to themselves about a clue.
Was Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, I haven't played Jedi, so it wasn't that, but maybe that's one.
Yes, I
kind of wish Horizon would do something like that rather than have Aloy just immediately like tell you what you need to do.
Yeah, Uncharted does that.
I remember. How about Resident Evil 6 when you play as Ada's Root? She's always like talking to herself every time you solve a puzzle or something.
No one remembers playing Resident Evil 6. Get out of here. Yeah.
But like, if you played Horizon Zero Dawn and you liked it, you will love Forbidden West because it improves it in so many ways while maintaining it's the same style of game. Now, if you didn't like Zero Dawn and you just didn't care for that style of game because of its design, maybe less so like the maybe some execution here and there, but the actual design is more not your thing, then Forbidden West is probably not going to change your mind. Now, in terms of like, we get this, we're all used to this. Some of us have been here a long time. We are all used to people like, this isn't an RPG. Why are you covering it? Like, that's kind of, we're kind of numb to that, to be honest, or at least I am. I think Horizon Forbidden West is pretty darn close. Like, you have stats on all your gear, and you have a ton of different stats. You have like damage stats, fire stats, piercing stats, tearing stats, and then same with your various defenses on your gear. You have levels. I know everything has a skill tree now, but yes, there's a skill tree. You have the quests. you are progressing through the game in the sense that I am much stronger now than I was at the beginning of the game in this sort of abstracted way that, it's not just a skill thing where it's just like I'm super good at. I'm not like super good archer now. I just have a better stat bow and I have better abilities now because I progressed through the RPG-ish systems in the game. The only place I would say this game is not very RPG-ish, the main thing is that like the quests are more like mini stories. You're not making a lot of decisions. There's no like, this isn't like I don't know, Skyrim or Kingdom Come Deliverance is a game I know. The thing is that where you had like a lot of branching quest decisions.
So many RPGs don't even like touch that. Like
right, exactly.
Final Fantasy X. What decisions do you make? Like,
I mean, no one ever questions that. Some people do make the argument. Yeah, some people do make the argument that like JRPGs aren't actually RPGs, which fine.
I mean,
but I think it's pretty darn close. I don't care to argue with you because like then we're just arguing two different dictionaries basically. Like, okay, you've determined your criteria, I've determined mine, and they're not in alignment, so we can't even have a discussion on this anymore.
Yeah,
but like I just think in terms of like progression, stats,
resource
things like
management.
that. Now you don't have like stats, like you don't have like a strength stat, but all your stats are tied to equipment. And when you progress through the game, you can find, earn, or buy new equipment that's like, oh, this bow is better and it has like these stats, and then you can upgrade the bow to get better stats and do more damage. And that sort of abstract nature of things is what is an RPG to me, rather than, a pure action game where maybe less stats and it's just purely on your ability to chain skills together or play the game. Where here there's this abstracted nature to things. So if it's not an RPG, then Valhalla isn't an RPG either. But I would say both in this case are like pretty darn close.
We need like the Watch Dogs Legion thing of like you can like hack into a person, like see their portfolio, but then in this case you hack into a person and then it just their only portfolio is like what they define as an RPG, and then listed some examples at what they consider RPGs, and then you can decide whether you want to interact with that person or not, based on that.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's a sort of game you kind of have to be in the mood for. Like I played Valhalla a year ago, roughly, and similar sort of open world.
So you're telling me you're not going to go straight into the new Valhalla DLC expansion thing?
I'll probably play it eventually, but I got
going to be a
standalone
thing
now,
and it's now okay.
On that note, I've kind of heard some pretty harsh things on that new expansion. So. And I wasn't even that hot on the original game on Valhalla.
You can't.
I did not expect to talk about Valhalla this much.
What's one harsh thing you've heard about
it? So Stephen Totillo from where is he at now? Axios. He's a big Assassin's Creed fan, and I saw him. He was just like, "This DLC is not very good." And then, like, I think James told me yesterday. I haven't checked this myself. That like IGN reviewed it and gave it like a 6. And it's just like, so basically I just haven't seen a whole lot of good things about this new expansion.
6 is above average. Oh, what's going on? What's going on?
But yeah, I'm enjoying Horizon Forbidden West. It's, I think for this sort of open world type of game, I think it avoids the major pitfalls in terms of like empty space, nothing to do. But, and there's nothing that says you have to do all the checklist stuff. Like I could have beaten the game probably 10 or 20 hours ago if I wanted to, and beaten it in a 30-40 hour window. And like, so it's, if you wanted just to like experience the story, it's not absolutely gigantic, but if you want to complete everything, then yes, it is. But I just think it makes so many improvements, and it's just kind of unfortunate that it released next door to Elden Ring, which takes like a new, more novel philosophy towards open worlds. And then, of course, like we said, people just kind of inevitably have to, deem one as the better game, which Elden Ring probably is, or at least the more interesting game for sure. But I think Horizon Forbidden West is, they made smart decisions in terms of looking at feedback to the original game and saying, all right, here's what we need to improve, and basically executing on that. So,
do you think they're going to make another one of these?
It's, from what I hear and from what I can tell where the story is going, if they want to complete the story, they're going to have to.
Okay.
So,
interesting.
It's a very classic middle entry feeling. Is that what you're sort of getting?
It's not. It doesn't feel like an Empire Strikes Back yet, but maybe the ending will be a really big downer. I don't know. Oh, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. I'm so sorry. Do I still have time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is one thing I did not know about, and I did not see in the marketing at all, and I wasn't expecting. So Horizon is a single player game. There's no party. You have one character. Aloy is your character. But in Horizon Forbidden West, you do recruit companions for this base that you basically form. It's almost like smack dab in the center of the map. And it feels like a very, very, very light version of like a BioWare RPG. And I did not know this existed. I don't know if any of you knew this either, but like one of the characters you sort of make your companion is Varl, and then there's Erend from the first game. He's the big hammer guy, if you remember correctly. Then you recruit some of the new characters in this game. There's Zoe, and then there's Alva, and Kontanen, I think is how you say his name, is a character. He's really cool. He's got one arm. That you kind of like recruit to your base, and you can speak with them and like sort of bond with them, but they don't. The reason why this is weird is I didn't know this existed. You kind of like recruit these characters that kind of hang out at this place for you, and they show up in the story here and there, but it kind of feels like they were like, oh, people like having companions in games. We should do that and stick them in this base. But I kind of feel like they, besides showing up in the story occasionally, they don't really do a whole lot. It doesn't feel, it's not necessarily bad, but it just kind of feels a little bit awkward to me. I don't know if I'm making my point properly, where you meet these characters, you kind of recruit them, and then they just sort of sit there.
I kind of have seen that in enough games now that I almost am like, it's not inherently bad. I just think I'm personally bored of it, of having like, here is the hub zone where you upgrade and add new like workbenches or companions or little marionette's not the right word, those little things that you store your armor or weapons. Or because I remember this is a bit of a weird tangent, but I was playing that Baldur's Gate sequel interquel that Beamdog made. What was it called?
Siege of Dragonspear.
Yeah, that one. And it does that whole BioWare thing where you have like your forward camp, and this is where all your companions hang out. Where if you haven't played the original Baldur's Gate, in the original Baldur's Gate, it's kind of like the opposite direction, where if you replace a companion, they just
sit where you
leave them. So it's like the opposite, where they don't have like a hometown that they return to. They just literally stay where you've left them.
Funny.
Anyways, the thing is I was playing the Siege of Dragonspear, and I remember feeling like, oh, this feels weird. This feels modern, but like not in a good way. This feels like but I don't know. It's not inherently bad, and I like that people like that collectathon-y kind of nature to it. Like, oh, I'm gonna fully upgrade my hub or my base and get all the companions or whatever. But then it just when it's shoehorned into I don't want to say shoehorned because I haven't played Zero Forbidden West, but it just feels like, oh, people like this, right? We'll put it in our game.
It feels like a nothing almost. Like it's not a bad thing, and you don't even. The base does slightly change over time, but it's not due to anything you're doing other than just like proceeding in the main story. It's not like if you do this event, you get this new thing at your base. At least not to any significant extent. But it feels like a big nothing. Like, oh, why is this here? I don't know. By the way, the character I mentioned before is Kotalo. He's cool though. But yeah, it's just one of those things that just like I didn't know it existed. When I got to that point in the game, I was just kind of like, huh, okay, sure.
How do you feel now that this is your first PS5 game? Do you now believe in the next generation of games?
So I mostly play on PC. Now the original Horizon I did play on PS4. One nice thing about this version, and I'm sure the eventual PC version of this will also have it. Like if you fast travel from one end of the map to the other, it is pretty darn quick. It's like 4 or 5 seconds, like 3 to 5 seconds to like load in like all the way across the map. Where I definitely know the original game was on the PlayStation 4 was not that. So if you basically there are loading times are very, very manageable. So thank you, the power of the PS5's SSD. By the way, this game is also on PS4.
Does that have any like cool dual sense things that's happening?
So this is my first PS5 game, and there are points in the game where you press one of the triggers to like pry open a door, and that's also how you do like your polecaster or in places. But the first time I was prying open a door, I thought my like trigger was broken. I'm like, why is this so hard to push down? I'm like, oh wait, that's probably this adaptive sense thing. Like it was just giving me a lot of resistance, and I thought it was just like, is my button broken? Like I just got this, I haven't even used it. And like, oh no, that's how it's actually supposed to work.
And if you think that is trippy, Adam, you need to play Returnal. That game is like the perfect example for the DualSense, and especially like the adaptive triggers. Just
it's been really interesting too, because I've had a buddy go through Gran Turismo 7, and he's like, in some cases, because he usually plays Gran Turismo games on the wheel, but he's like, in some specific cases in that game, he prefers playing it on the controller, the way it handles like the DualSense to emulate like the feeling of traction against the road. On that, he's really impressed with the way they implemented it in that game.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West. I'm glad we were able to get it mentioned and give it its due diligence on the podcast, and it will be, we'll talk about it later this year to see how we feel about it, and we'll see if other people get around to it before the end of the year stuff. I don't know, like, if based on the previous release, it'll be a while before we see it on PC, but I do also have a PS5, so maybe I will try it out. But looking at all the releases that are filtering into later in the year, I don't know if there's no such thing seemingly as a good time to like wait to fill in a game, because something else is always coming out.
It seems like we're gonna have a little bit of a quiet period for RPGs in the next like couple of months before the summer, but then like we just got 2 new Square Enix games announced, spoiling the later parts of the podcast here. It's like, oh, these are coming out this year too. Okay.
Yep. Stuff like that, where it's like, oh, I guess I got to earmark time for these, at least one of them, even if you're not interested in both.
Yeah. We'll see.
So one game that was a new release that we talked about last week was Triangle Strategy. And we were able to talk about the review that Cullen put up for us, and then Josh was able to talk about his early time with the game. This was our most anticipated game, and I voted for that, and I am wanting to play it, but I just haven't had time. So I figured we'd at least mark a little time here to revisit it, because I know that Josh has been playing quite a lot of it over the last week. And I know Chow, I believe Chow has also started it. And just wanted to hear like your continuing thoughts as you have worked your way through Triangle Strategy. And have you finished it?
Yeah, I finished my first playthrough, clocked in around 44 hours. I went down with the 3 paths, like the morality ending or the morality route. I had a lot of fun time. It does remind me of like a PS1 era strategy RPG, but like in a good way, like the way it handles like mission design and encounter design. Like there's every single main story mission in that game will have you kind of thinking about how you want to get through it. And if you're the sort of person that's like, I gotta try to get through this like a deathless, good luck. It's one of those games where unless you're playing on the easiest difficulty, like I just play on normal, and even normal is like there are definitely going to be times where I'm just like, I have to learn to like let go of this unit because their sacrifice in this mission will get me to my overall goal.
But even there's no permadeath though, right?
There's no permadeath. There's no penalty for having a person fall in battle. The only penalty is like, any experience points they could have gotten in this, henceforth, obviously are forfeit on that because they're not there.
Also just their general utility in the battle.
Yeah, but there are ways, to like, there'll be maybe some accessories like the resurrection earring. I only have like one of those, but that lets them revive once for battle, and like some very like maybe 1 or 2 characters that have like a trait that lets them revive once in battle. But other than that, I think there might be also like a spell or 2 that can allow that, but it takes a lot of like TP or like the action points in that game. But overall, I enjoyed my time with it. I remember, I think a few of you, I think it was James, Chow, and I think it was you, Adam, who was watching me do like the final mission in my morality route. And
and you misunderstood the objective.
Yeah, so like I made that way harder than it was for myself. Not to spoil anything about the context of it, but the mission itself took place like in front of this waterfall. There's like a long bridge, and like they're in that mission. There are like 3 NPCs that are it's sort of like you have to escort them in the sense that like you have to make sure none of them fall in battle, or else it's a instant fail. And so it was very late for me, and I was already feeling sleepy.
It was like past midnight. Yeah.
It was like 2 a.m. at least. And I was like, okay, well, I just want to get this game done because I'm already here, so let's just get into it. And for some reason, I read the objectives, and I'm like, okay, I understand what I have to do. And for some reason, I just totally just forgot. My brain just stopped working because I thought the objective of that mission was to escort these NPCs to like the marked region, because like in SRPGs, you'll have those missions of escort missions of like, oh, you got to get these people out of here, evacuate them, and then mission completion when you fulfill that condition. Like it happens all the time in strategy RPGs. So I was like, I just and then I'm just like, okay, well, then it's like trying to like figure out ways to like get them through that, because the AI is like so annoying. Like they have low movement, and one of the AI, go for it.
The AI have a low. They do not care for their self-preservation.
Yeah, like one of the AI has a healing ability, which is a curse on me, because this AI would always, if they like feel like anyone within 100 miles of them is like slightly has a scratch on them, they're like, oh shit, I gotta get over to them and then heal them. It's like, no, please just continue moving
worry
forward.
about yourself, please.
Yeah, just continue moving to the objective. And like this AI just like would always just like, oh no, I see that you're missing 1 health point, let me go heal that and move backwards. I'm like, no, what are you doing? So like it's so frustrating to the point that like for one early attempt at the mission, they only had like maybe 3 or 4 people left, and like the AI was almost to the finish. Like they're like maybe like 2 more steps into like the zone, and what they did instead was, instead of like going into the zone, they were like, oh, let me go heal your people and then go out backwards into the open, away from everyone else, right in front of the enemy line of sight where I could be hit. And then they did that, and then they got themselves killed, and then it's like, you've fallen. I'm like, fuck.
And then you realize you didn't need to do any of that.
Yeah, and then I looked at the mission objective again, and the mission objective is like, just kill the boss, just kill the main enemy commander. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm fucking stupid, and my brain can't work. I no longer have a brain at this point. So,
I think the reason why you fought that way, I guess it's the last boss had like a ton of HP, and it was like surrounded by tons of enemy units. Your brain's probably processing, man, this is way too hard. So you probably just thought, maybe I just need to escort the NPCs to win. That's probably
maybe. But then like once I saw that objective, it like maybe took me another 1 or 2 tries. I forgot, but yeah, like I was just like, all right, we're gonna fucking straddle up, have a very light escort unit to make sure my NPCs are safe, or they're safe enough, while everyone else is like literally just my dudes and like 4 spellcasters just ready to fucking lay waste to the enemy army, just with no. And then when the commander was like isolated themselves from the rest, I'm like, we gotta jump on this. We gotta do this. It's now or never. And it got pretty close, because like it got to the point where my escort unit for the NPCs were wiped out, and like the NPCs just kind of like had to fend for themselves for like a very brief bit. And I was like, if I don't do this now, then one of them is gonna get killed, and then it's gonna be a game over there. So it was a pretty intense final battle or final mission. It was. But there's like, that's one of the consistent things about the game, is like the main story missions are always gonna be testing you in different ways. I really like the mission design in that game, and just like the overall variety of the levels.
That's good. I don't like when the levels are always just like, here's a square map, defeat the boss. So it's good to hear that there's a lot of variety in terms of the objectives and the environments.
Yeah, there's like another one where like you're like in a long cavern, and then there's like a whole minecart aspect to it, where you can like ride around the minecarts, and anyone in the tracks takes damage. The really cool thing about that also is like, what I realized is like that the railways for those minecarts are also affected by electricity. So if like if you put down a spell on any one of those tiles, it'll affect the whole track that it's routed on, and then anyone who's in that way, gets affected by the electricity as well. So there's definitely a lot of ways to play around with that, and with some maps that have interactive elements like that.
Who is your favorite character in terms of like pure utility, like not story wise at all, just like in battle, there's like your MVP?
I really like the main archer you get is really good because she's on our chocobo, and so she has like really high movement and can like scale up buildings very easily on her own without the need of like a ladder or anything. So she can just like take like the spot on like on top of like a high rooftop, and since she's on a high elevation, her range increases for that. What I don't like about her, she has like low accuracy for like her basic attacks, which is annoying. But trying to think what else. I really like the clown girl as well. Oddly enough, she has like low attack power, but she has a lot of gimmicks to her. Like she can send out a decoy that can act as like a secondary tank and like gets waste enemy turns, and then eventually that decoy, if it goes to its HP goes to 0, like it'll just explode and do AoE damage to any enemies around it. And then you can start like playing around with it more, where she gets like an ability where she can swap places with the decoy, and she also has like an ability where she can like mimic an enemy ability, the last enemy ability that's been done, so she can actually like effectively be like whatever you need her to be for like a brief amount of time. Like say a spellcaster just did like a powerful ability, it's like, oh, I want to copy that ability for her and then use it elsewhere. So she's a pretty good utility character. There's another one that might become my favorite if I take the time to experiment with him. Like I just barely recruited this character that like has like time manipulation to it, which is he seems really cool with the way that like he can basically like reverse turns for a lot of
those sort of like auxiliary characters that aren't really like damage dealers. Sometimes it can take a while to like figure out how to play with them, but then they can be really nifty if you figure that out.
Yeah, they have like the calculator class from FFT in this game, like through like an automaton barrel thing. Like it's just literally the character size is a barrel with like arms and a leg. I'm like, oh, all right. And its abilities are like, its abilities are all like huge AoE, almost like encompass the whole battlefield, but it'll only affect enemies of certain like HP multiples. Like it'll have an attack for all enemies that have an HP multiple of 3, 4, or 5, and so forth. And they all have different effects to them. So like if you do one, this will slow all the movement of the people that it hits. While another one might be like it'll do a heavy damage to all it hits, and have a chance of instant death, but only if there are certain HP multiples in it's like in the field that it's in. So like if you're really really good at like calculating damage formulas and how much like damage you're actually doing to enemies relative to their HP, you can actually like say line up HP totals for his ability. So like say you got every like 5 enemies to like an HP total or HP multiple of 5, you'd use this ability, and now has like for each and any of those units that like is targeted, it has a chance to instant kill them as well. So that's a really interesting, like it's an interesting character that's like you have to really have a big brain to work around, but not in. But I appreciate that, like there's a lot of variety to the type of units it has in this game. Yeah, but now I'm like maybe a few hours into New Game Plus because I want to explore another route there, because there is a golden route in this game. But
gritting my teeth.
I know. I hear the way that
stop putting golden paths in your branching narrative challenge. I don't know.
I know. I hear the way that the golden path is structured. It is more it is preferable to play that on a New Game Plus type scenario, because the way it's structured, it's pretty tough if you're doing it on a very first playthrough. And obviously the way to get to it is like obscure enough that like there
you have to follow a guide or get really lucky.
And get very lucky to like just stumble onto it somehow. So I kind of want to see that and see how that plays out. But even then, like it has incentives to like see all the routes, because every single path has like an event, a route exclusive character. So, my path, there's a certain character that's not available in any other path because of how events laid out in that route. And then that holds true for all the others. So if you really want to get all the characters in this game, it'll be 4 playthroughs minimum, all the paths minimum.
Yep.
So if you really want to see everyone there, New Game Plus is really interesting because what I really liked about the game, going into it was I played it my own way, and there are in the demos that have been coming out for this game, there's like a voting mechanic where the story branches, and then like it's all dictated by this item called the Scales of Conviction. And how this works is that everyone in like the main cast, like the cast of like 7 to 8 characters, has like a token that they can put on the Scales of Conviction to like vote for one way or the other of like what they feel they want to do or what is the right path. And yeah, it's up to you. Like if you want to take a certain way, you have to convince all the people who are opposed to that to it to like kind of sway them over and persuade them like, hey, we should really do this, and here are the my reasons why I think we should do this. And it's really cool how the game kind of plays with expectations around that, because at some points when you're doing before the vote, you can go explore the city or town, and like you can go get kind of like talk to NPCs like your residents in like the house that you're in, and like think about like their perspectives, like what do you think about this situation, and like what are your thoughts on it, and kind of get additional information before you come to before you try to persuade the other people. So you go around like your town, and sometimes they like talk about like certain details that you weren't privy to going to this, and that'll be like a keyword. It's kind of like Final Fantasy II's keywords. So you kind of get new information and you light into it, and then you go back into the vote. And when you're talking with some people, there's usually like 2 dialogue options, but sometimes there'll be a third dialogue option that was previously locked that'll like unlock because you got the keyword for it. And the nice thing is that's not always the right answer to persuade them. A lot of the time, that third response is kind of a trap to like you think that you think that's the right answer because you unlocked it.
Right. It's very gamey to be like, this is the new information, this has got to work, but it's actually like, no, you already had the information needed to convince this person.
Yeah, exactly. And like you just and the way you kind of try to persuade people to that side is to think about their personality, think about their values, think about like what like say Roland, for example. Like there's a certain point like in the very first demo that happens to like his mentor, and like when thinking about like what to do moving forward, yeah, like you could use the option that like you unlock through a keyword that's talking about like say like the resources of another nation and like how that can be beneficial for you, when really you don't really need to do that with him because he doesn't really care about that at the moment. He's more he cares more about like what happened to his mentor and like the uncertain fate of his mentor at a certain point. And then in that case it would be more wise to lean into that angle of like, okay, think about what your mentor would have wanted, and that that's playing into like what he cares about at that time. So that's really interesting that like a lot of those unlockable things are fake outs. So, but every dialogue option that isn't like the voting, like when you're out on the town, like talking with people and like picking between like the like how you respond to them and their worries, you're notified early on that like the main 3 tenets are utility, morality, and liberty, but you don't know which the option is which necessarily. You can like read into it and like kind of get like, okay, this seems more like it represents liberty. This sounds like it's more or of a moral choice. The way this option sounds, but you don't really know for certain. And that's kind of how it shapes your path.
I kind of like that. I have seen some people criticize that it's a little bit obscured and not completely transparent in that sense. So I kind of like it.
I like it. I like it
rather than just telling you like outright like this option is the utility option.
Exactly. So like that's only effective on your first playthrough, and I think that's really smart to do it like that, like do that on the first playthrough. But in New Game Plus, that's when all the gamey stuff is like surfaced, like the curtain is revealed, and it's lifted, and like every choice in like New Game Plus and so on after your first playthrough, it'll say by the choices, this is utility, this is morality, this is liberty, and all the and all the dialogue that says Sarah Noah's convictions have been strengthened. Like you know that you're affecting one of those, but you didn't know which. Now in New Game Plus, it actually shows you, oh, you picked the utility option, utility plus 50, or you picked the liberty option, liberty plus 10, and like and it like throughout your first playthrough, like in battles, it'll show like during certain battles that like Sarah Noah's convictions have been strengthened, and you're like, oh, that's weird. Like, why is it doing that? But like, you learn in New Game Plus that certain specific actions in battle like affect those very slightly. So if like you use like an attack item, you gain this like a liberty, for example, liberty plus 1, or if you sell a certain amount, utility plus 1. So it really just lifts the curtain on like every action that you're doing slightly affects these, and then and all the decisions that you're making like affects them even more so.
I do have another question about like battle decisions. Like in one of the demos, it was in a demo that's been out for like a year now, so not really a spoiler. You have like one of your bases is going to be attacked, and you learn that you can trap the enemy by burning houses. But there was, I remember like I challenged myself during this demo to beat the battle without using any of the traps, without burning any of the houses, and there was actually like additional dialogue that would play if you manage that. Does the game have like more of that, where it has like stuff specific to the actions you took in battle, even if it doesn't have like a route selection tied to it?
So I don't know like how the other routes take it, but like for my playthrough or my route that I chose, there was no other battle that like that specific battle mechanics like that of like, oh, try not to use this mechanic, or like this certain thing that has like, you know, it feels bad when you use it in the context of things. But in the route that I chose, I never found another battle that was like that, on like whether you chose to do use those traps or not in battle. From
I kind of figured when I was playing that, like, okay, this is probably a very specific thing that they're highlighting in the demo because it is kind of neat. But I wasn't actually like, I'm not surprised to hear you say that it's not widespread.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of those if there are more of those. So I do wonder about that as well. If there's anything like any other battle like that, whether it's a route exclusive thing or not. But I do know that like whether you choose to you do choose to use that or not does affect some things in the way that the route selection that you have. But yeah, I think it's a really smart like kind of game design decision of like obscuring those mechanics early, just a first playthrough, because I think part of the charm of the first playthrough of this game is like just go with what you think seems interesting, and like and
don't worry about it whether it's optimal or golden or whatever.
Yeah, you live with your consequences, and like it's cool to see how that manifests, because like it's one of those things that I know a lot of like some people have been kind of this really turns them off, and like but it surfaces in the New Game Plus like your utility, morality, and liberty points for your character after you can like start recruiting characters in New Game Plus, and you can start like seeing like what your exact values are in that, because for the optional recruitable characters to encounter them, you need to like meet certain thresholds in those each 3 of those to like start like even like get the opportunity to recruit them. But the way that like voting works in this game is that if you have been going the liberty choice, for example, for a good chunk of your playthrough, whether you know it or not, like because you just think that those options are more appealing to you, but then when you try to go later on, say that like you've been advocating like, you know, war crimes here and there, and then all of a sudden at like a late point in the game, you're like, oh, I want to do the moral thing. Of course, people are not gonna support that. Like, oh, now you want to do the moral thing after like you have so much blood on your hands, and like it'll be very hard, if not near impossible, to like convince them to go that, because you've been heading down a certain path all that time, you know, because of the way that you know your whatever mindset or line of thinking was.
I do like the idea of having like moral momentum, where it's just like you can't do it.
Rather than like a bunch of isolated rather than just a bunch of isolated choices where it doesn't matter like one to the next. Like
To me that I like that. For like, I've been here for like from some people like out there about the game. It's like I don't like that like my decisions have consequences essentially. Of course you're not like it makes sense in the context of the game that like you can't do a U-turn on like what like you wanted to do. Unless you got like barely enough like points behind the scenes to, like convince people to go do a U-turn along with you in that. So
consequences. Clearly, this is truly an RPG, as we've decided.
Unlike, there are definitely like the way that the final branching paths split out. It's certainly like I'm very interested to see like I eventually want to get to a point in this game. It's not immediately of course, but I do want to see all those endings because I'm so curious to see how those play out. I think it's one of those games that's just like it kind of deserves it to me because they done a lot to like make me interested in like how the characters respond to certain situations and like how routes play out. I think the story itself is like good enough for like to accommodate what you're doing, but it's not like the most. It's not it's like the most stellar political drama, but it's like compelling enough to see how those alternate futures would play out. And I think like the core cast itself, like they're not all amazing. They're not like all top of the line, well realized characters, but they're as an ensemble, they're pretty good.
Like I also think there was a big problem with the cast. I think I tried it in English, and I could see why people didn't like it too much.
Yeah, I played the Japanese VA because I tried playing the first demo in English, and I was like, I'm not really too sold on this English voice cast. But for not to say that the Japanese voice cast is like miles better. I'm just more accustomed to that like sort of political drama, like the way that they presented in this game, and like, but there are some like later scenes that are like really good with the Japanese voice cast, and I wonder if that's how it is in the English version as well. I have no idea, but there are some like really good moments. It's like, oh, okay, man, that's awesome.
I just think it's Benedict's fault. It just sounds like this guy's just reading the script. It's like, oh, must take the Lord. You must do this. It's like, oh my god, can we? I just hate it when like a main character gets like so much screen time and the voice isn't good. It kind of puts you off, you know.
How is the balance? Like this has kind of been like a elephant in the room thing for this game. How is the balance between like, you hear a lot of hyperbole where it's like there's 2 hours of dialogue for every 15 minutes of gameplay. Like how is the balance between exposition and gameplay?
I think it's very, very top heavy. Like it's like very beginning heavy. Like even on my New Game Plus, like even then, like just establishing everything, I think still takes way too much time. I get why they do it. It makes sense in the context of it, but I still think it's a really, really slow early on. Once things get rolling and once you start getting the second half of the game, like there are still a lot of story scenes, but like. But the way I play that game, I also play the optional challenge mission. So like I'm more exposed to the gameplay that like one would be just main story pathing it. Like there's still a good chunk of it, but it evens out to like maybe 60-40 in my opinion.
All right, so get through that first hump, and then it ends up being not quite so uneven.
Yeah, because like missions don't take stages don't take forever, but what's there it really has you thinking like moment to moment what you're going to be doing next. Because like enemies on normal, and I imagine even more so on hard, like are just generally threatening. You're never going to go into a scenario where like you can bum rush like stages that are like equal level or higher level than you. It's never going to be like a breeze in the park. It's always going to be, oh, these enemies are dangerous. I have to think about like how to spread aggro among my allies and think about how to keep like my squishier people safe, because some of those people will go down in one shot if they get a nice position and critical on you, while there's like other enemies on the adjacent side ready for follow-up attacks. And so it's like it's just so threatening with the way stages are designed at times in that game, where you have to really push yourself to think about how you want your characters to synergize against certain scenarios. and like it's very versatile in the way it does it too. Like there's not like a one strategy beats all because of the situations that you find yourself in. So and like in like there will be some stages that like I use characters like I go out of my comfort zone. There's never like a central squad that I'm rolling with. I'm sure you can if you really want to, but for me, I like to spread levels around my characters. So I push myself to use unconventional characters and then I find like really unconventional tactics that that kind of uh emerge from like just like the adversity of the situation. So that I really like playing around with that system and seeing how characters make use of one another, because everyone like no one's always going to be like interfacing with the enemies. There's a lot of like prep work that you can do to really make your turns count against enemies.
So this is on the normal difficulty.
Yeah,
I actually really like that it sounds really like you got to have a head on your shoulders in order to like it's good that it's on the normal difficulty, that it has that expectation. Like, all right, we understand that players playing this are likely coming from other strategy games and will have some basic understanding of general tactics and things like that. But also has the easy mode if you need it.
Yeah, it has that like very easy if you really want to tone it down. Then those options are there, and you can always toggle them at any time outside of battle. Yeah, but I think it's a really good game.
I also think it's kind of unfair to always compare a game to Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna compare. It's like if there's an RPG that ever comes out, we're always gonna compare it to Final Fantasy VI or something. It feels kind of unfair, because they're like the holy grails of tactical RPGs, right? So it's very unfair to say that.
Yeah, I mean that's the weird thing, because like the of Square Enix like releasing like a strategy RPG like for the first time in like how many years, like it's kind of sets itself up for that. Like I appreciate it for being its own thing, but I can definitely understand like it also like invites comparisons to it, because this fucking game has a calculator class.
So you say it brought it upon themselves.
So I like it's like expected in a sense, right? Because you don't put like a one-to-one thing in here like without paying homage. So I mean, it's kind of a it's not really people's faults for like comparing this to like old strategy RPGs, because that's what they remember. And when you put out a new game, you think about like, oh, okay, like it's okay to appreciate for what it is, but for other like a good chunk of people, it's like, okay, how does this compare to like the games that I really like? I hope it's as good as those, if not better than those. Like this game does not exist in a vacuum, whether we like it or not. Because strategy RPGs, especially like more realized ones, especially coming under being published by Square Enix, is like a dime a dozen these days. Like you don't really see it that often. So it just invites that of like, oh, okay, when I think about other Square Enix strategy RPGs back then, what do I remember? And like a lot of the mechanics in this game, this game doesn't exist without Tactics Ogre Final Fantasy Tactics. This Triangle Strategy doesn't like magically like invent all of these things. It's like a refinement of things that came before it. I think that's natural and that's okay. Not to say that every strategy RPG. It's not like I compare Super Robot Wars to FF Tactics. That's like those are two separate things. But Super Robot Wars is a long running series. So what do I compare with SRW with? Older SRW games. And that's and SRW games like aren't seen in a vacuum. Moving forward, they're always going to be older SRW games. Always going to be thought of when playing newer SRW games, because it's one of those things like, what does this thing what does it do new, what does it do different? And it's not like this invented everything about SRW. You know what I mean?
I get you.
Yeah, and for Triangle Strategy, since it's a new IP, you can kind of compare it to other HD 2D games, I guess, but those play very differently. So people are going to go back to what they know, and people know Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, or Fire Emblem maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, it's like Elden Ring, for example. Like, it's not like people are like, Elden Ring like invented everything the Souls games have been. It's like people constantly think about Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1 through 3, Bloodborne. Like Elden Ring does not exist without all the other things that came before it.
That is true. But there's also one last thing I want to mention about it. I don't think the story is as ham-fisted as people were making it out to be. I feel it's just like the standard strategy RPG exposition. Because a lot of strategy RPGs, you kind of get this big lore dump before you get into the battle.
It's like a play almost, right? Because like in stage plays, you'll definitely have intermissions of like scene start, scene goes through it, scene ends, curtain closes to the next scene. But I think the what Cullen and I were talking about is like, yes, there's exposition in this game. Maybe it's not like it doesn't tell you everything beat by beat by beat, but what we were focused on last week was like, and you'll encounter this as the game goes on, is like the narrator, like you'll go through three story scenes, and at the end of that, the narrator will be like, all right, here's what happened in these story scenes, and like it breaks that flow of like,
yeah,
like I understand what happened, it's okay.
I do agree that the narrator is the worst part about it. I'll be like, oh, this situation has sparked a war later on. It's like
no shit.
It's like, god damn it.
Thank you,
narrator.
Like the narrator is okay for like establishing like the very beginning of like, okay, here's the history of this world. There's a Salt Iron War. There's these three nations. This is the natural resources that they have, or this is how they serve one another in this economy. Like, okay, world building stuff I get, but narrator like literally always be like, all right, you saw these two story scenes. Here's what happened. This and this happened, and this could have, and you know, we're now on the eve of X happening because of this. Like, yes, thank you for connecting the dots for me. I could not think for myself.
So you can't turn off the narrator, just like you can't turn off Eloy's
exactly
narration. There you go. Yeah. There must always be this.
But I really hope, you know, it's going to be interesting now that you reminded me. I really wonder if Triangle Strategy comes to PC. I forgot how Bravely Default 2's end credits were, but when James especially was looking out for this during the end credits of Triangle Strategy, there's a lot of involvement and coordination from Nintendo's end in those end credits. So, like, there were multiple branches of Nintendo involved in this project in coordinating it. So, just like wondering, it's like, okay, does this make it to PC at all then? Eventually?
Well, we saw the credits, and there was a PC business division. Was it on there?
I mean, but like this game was like probably made for like on PCs first, you know. Not just because you have like a PC division label doesn't mean that it's coming out on PC. Like this has clearly been tested on like other machines on a PC environment first before, you know, doing it on a Nintendo Switch dev kit. So it like I'm trying to remember. Do you remember, Brian, Bravely Default 2's end credits? If there's like a lot of it, like Nintendo involvement.
I don't remember. I don't think it did. Okay. But I just don't like. I don't. Remember. Yeah, that was over a year ago. That was last February.
Yeah, I'm like, look, I don't remember much either. So.
Well, nobody reads the credits, so it's usually.
I mean, I do. I like going through credits. I get excited when I get to the end credits of an RPG and be like, all right, that's cool. It's kind of, or any game really. I like watching the credits and seeing who worked on it. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just crazy. But yeah, I mean, hopefully more people get a chance to try this game out. I think it'll really click with you, Brian and Adam.
Yep, it's on my list.
I think you guys will find it neat. This is a good one of these types of games, and hopefully it comes to other platforms.
And I was really impressed with the demo, so I'm already got a good feeling about it. Try not to let the lukewarm general reception color my expectations too much.
Yeah, you know, I don't even know if I'd say it's like lukewarm. It's just kind of I think
it's not hitting high 90s.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy Tactics is here again or whatever.
I think the game does have a really brutal start for it though. So just get your expectations in line of like it's very very slow early.
Okay. And that kind of covers it for the two games that we wanted to talk about. We do have a couple releases in middle of March that we will likely be discussing next week. Before we get into the news section, which is a lot of release dates and, of course, some new information about new announcements coming from last week's State of Play, We did have one new feature on the site. We couldn't avoid Elden Ring entirely this podcast. Alex Donaldson put up a feature basically saying that after having finished Elden Ring, he can't stop thinking about Dragon's Dogma 2, and basically looking at the parallels between those two games and what he would like to see and not see in a potential sequel to Dragon's Dogma. It's a game that anyone that knows Alex knows that it's like near and dear to his heart, and it's something that he's been asking for a while now, and now he's just contextualizing it with the Elden Ring angle. And if Dragon's Dogma 2, which hasn't been announced and doesn't exist yet, if it can learn anything from Elden Ring, I say it can learn infinite stamina outside of combat. Because if you don't remember, in that game, stamina is used for both casting magic and like sprinting. So like whenever you're like running across the map, you're constantly like having to sprint, stop, sprint, stop, sprint, stop. And I actually, when I played Dragon's Dogma a few years back, I modded it so that it did have infinite stamina outside of combat. And of course, it's only a few like flags away if you want to have infinite stamina all the time and just cast all the magic whenever you can do that. But whatever.
I thought the same thing when I was going through Elden Ring of like that whole you can definitely go in the wrong, quote unquote, the wrong direction, meaning like that you'll encounter things way higher level than you very easily early on. So I definitely think about Dragon's Dogma time here and there when I played through Elden Ring. Mm-hmm. It was I'm really interested to see like Itano is one, working on it, probably, maybe, most likely, who knows, and two, like if he's maybe looking at Elden Ring and be like, there are some cool ideas here. Obviously, I wouldn't want Dragon's Dogma to change up too much, and go full on Elden Ring. But there's the sharing notes is cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this week, back on what was it, on Wednesday, was the most recent state of play from Sony and PlayStation, focusing on their Japanese partners. So a lot of people were hoping maybe this is when we'll see the Pixel remasters, maybe this is when we'll see Final Fantasy 16, maybe this is when we'll see other stuff. I think some people were expecting news about Forspoken, and spoilers, they were right. But we also got some other announcements that we weren't expecting, some good, maybe some still up in the air. So the first thing I have listed here is a new trailer for a new Square Enix title, the announcement of Valkyrie Elysium, launching in this year for PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC via Steam.
Valkyrie's back, baby! Woo!
And this is a game that obviously I have not played Valkyrie Profile. I've only played Covenant of the Plume, which is like the ugly stepchild SRPG for like the Game Boy Advance. I don't know why.
Covenant of the Plume is pretty good.
Yeah, I like Covenant of the Plume.
To be honest with you, I play all the Valkyrie Profile games except that one. So I can't give you any.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I really like it.
Yeah, so we've got a new trailer, both English and Japanese trailers, about 2 minutes, basically showcasing the premise of the game, showing a fair bit of combat, showing some story cutscenes. It's, in terms of what type of content these are showing, these trailers are pretty comprehensive. Like sometimes when something is first announced, it's like a teaser that's 30 seconds, or it just gives you like the loosest idea of what a game is. But this has kind of a good mix of things. However, the trailer itself is, I guess I don't know. I don't want to broach this subject. Like, Adam, when you saw this trailer, I know have a very near and dear to your heart Valkyrie Profile, the original game, and you think it does some really, really cool things. And we actually have a YouTube video up on our channel from 2 years ago about it. So what was your gut reaction to Valkyrie Elysium?
So like, I'm a big fan of Valkyrie Profile, and just seeing the Valkyrie like IP again is exciting. But the very first thing is that this game doesn't look great, and I mean that both from like a fidelity level and like an artistic level. It's got this kind of awkward art style to me in terms of it's like semi-cell shaded, not a lot of like textured details, but not. It doesn't seem like great artistic either.
Brian had a really good like example for it. It looks like Super Smash Brothers Ultimate for 3DS.
Oh yeah, not Super Smash Brothers 4 for 3DS.
Oh yeah,
it does this thing. It does this thing with the characters. They're like low res with a big black outline, and it almost looks like a pop-up book or something. And that's what the models in this Valkyrie Elysium trailer look like to me, which that style on its own is not inherently bad. I think it made more sense for a 3DS because you're like, okay, it's got limited processing power. Here's a way to have slightly lower like technical fidelity. It's like, okay, I guess they're doing that here too. That's fine. But then the environments look like so I am not a game developer, so this statement might be a bit ignorant, but it looks like kind of like a dev toolkit, like an engine prop setting, like, okay, this is a generic Unreal Castle environment that you can use to test your animations in. That's kind of what it comes across to me as a layperson, where it doesn't look like it fits the tone of the game. It looks like the character and enemy models were just kind of like transplanted from whatever software was used to generate them into this environment, and they don't fit together.
Let's back it up and say, like, this game does not use the Valkyrie profile fighting system, the combat system. This is a third-person action RPG, much like Drakengard 3 almost.
I thought it was Drakengard 4. Like before they announced the title, I was like, "This looks jank. This looks kind of,
it looks jank. Like the graphics are kind of like late PS3 maybe, and it's being published by Square Enix. So maybe we're here, Drakengard 4, and then you hear the Sakuraba soundtrack, and like they hear talk about like the way they talk
Valkyrie.
about Valkyrie.
They literally say Valkyrie.
Yeah, and it's like, oh no, and it's like this is. Well,
so
okay.
For someone who's super intimate with the Valkyrie profile IP, do we know who this protagonist Valkyrie is?
There's no obvious connection to the other games here. So in the Valkyrie profile series 1 and 2, there are 3 Valkyries: Laneth, Silmeria, and Hrist. And like they're very well defined in terms of both who they are and what they look like. Like we see 2 Valkyries in this trailer. There's like the one you play as, and there's like one at the end, but they don't look like anyone we know. None of the other characters, like we don't see Odin, we don't see Freya.
I did see some people say like, well, at least the trailer had Hrist. Like, is that just wishful thinking, or people pulling at straws, or what?
That character at the end doesn't look like Hrist to me. Like
it doesn't, but people probably assume because of the black armor, and these days, maybe people just want to fit in that diversity card. I don't know, trying to switch character to a black character. I don't know. I mean, it happens in movies.
But yeah, like the hair is different. Maybe it's like a redesign of Hrist. That's possible, but it just doesn't look like what she looks like in the games. Yeah. Like even the armor is different. So
who knows? Like it wouldn't make much sense to me either. But you never know.
I was trying to think of a different comparison. Does anyone remember the Daredevil movie where they got Mike and Duncan Clark as the Kingpin? I was like, maybe
this, but no.
maybe that's the same reaction with Chris.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I sort of remember. I was trying to think of a more recent example, and like there is, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. Of like where they actually just like change like a returning character's like ethnicity out of nowhere, and like it's happened recently, but I can't remember where I remember this from. Like exactly
was a Witcher.
Isn't there a Resident Evil something or other where they're gonna have like a black Albert Wesker?
Definitely, there's Resident Evil does have that. I think,
or the like Death Note. I think L was black, wasn't
it? It could be that, but but those weren't the examples. But the Resident Evil one that does strike out to me as well. Now that you reminded me, yes.
Yeah, so I think that could be Hrist. That's me. I'll take that bet.
The thing is, to me, it feels like someone's like, I really want to see Hrist because that was the game we never got. So I'm going to say, well, maybe this must be her, but they just changed her entire look. It just feels like really like wishful thinking, kind of like.
But I don't know if that's a good thing either, because I always remember that she was the evil Valkyrie out of the 3 Valkyries. Like she always done something evil. Technically,
fucked up, child. You're saying this Valkyrie that we don't that barely got 2 seconds of screen time at the end is evil.
I don't know, man.
Well, we don't even know if it's the Valkyrie we think it is.
Anyways,
I already have the fanfic ready.
One thing we didn't mention is that this game is not being developed by Tri-Ace, who developed Valkyrie profile games. It's being developed by Soleil, And if you've never heard of Soleil, like I have never heard of Soleil, they have done like Ninjala and Naruto to Boruto, Shinobi Striker, and a few other games. There's like, what is it? Evil Dead? Not Evil Dead. Oh yeah, they did the Samurai Jack game. So it's like a few games that I've
and you're gonna say that
otherwise I haven't played any of them.
There's a weird one. Square Enix always Square Enix always does that. Square Enix is very outsource heavy these days. They hardly ever fucking work internally on projects anymore. But this is such a weird one to like hand off to, like, not to say that like Soleil might not, maybe this was gonna be like a banger, for out of nowhere. But it's just one of those weird things that like you would think the Valkyrie IP would hold, more. It would garner more attention from a higher recognized developer. But who knows? I share a lot of like first impression sentiments with Adam. Like when I went to this, I'm like, oh no, this looks.
Yeah, awful. The combat looks kind of weird. There seems to be a system in place where you have Einherjar, and there's like a scene in the trailer where she kind of like summons one and then returns to her. If you're not familiar with Valkyrie profile games or Valkyrie mythos in general, they can basically summon spirits of the dead.
I play 2 Human. I know this mythology.
There we go. Fantastic.
So, now in terms of the story, like we didn't get a whole much of one. It's just like you're in the service of a god and you're a Valkyrie, and it's like, okay, yeah, we otherwise don't really know.
Yeah, I was actually gonna wonder, like, is there anything outside of the trailer, like in the press release text or wording? The only thing that I don't think we mentioned is that Nier Automata character designer Yuya Nagai will partner with Square Enix for this project. We also mentioned that Sakuraba is back doing the composing. But that's pretty much it. I guess it's the combat uses features from across the series, such as finishing moves and combos. I don't know.
The main character also doesn't have a name. The official description is that the game's protagonist, the young Valkyrie, who is entrusted with the fate of the world by the All-Father, the highest of gods and the ruler of all creation. She will face various enemies on her quest, blah, 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 to prevent Ragnarok. So it's like, okay, sure, you're a Valkyrie preventing Ragnarok. It's very surface level stuff right now.
Yeah,
we don't even know her name.
Yeah, I think like one of the like former Tri-Ace members like gave their blessing for this project, like in their typical Twitter message letter. Yeah. So you kind of have that, like they acknowledge it. Obviously, they're not involved with it, but then there's like some weird terminology of like, if you want to see more Valkyrie stuff, maybe consider getting this. It's like, oh man, are you telling me? Kind of holding it hostage, huh? So.
Wasn't there a few years ago, like they had a really nice touched up mobile version of Valkyrie Profile that never got sent to like Vita or Switch?
Yep.
There's a mobile version of Valkyrie Profile Online. It's the first game, and I kind of wish they would just take it and put it on PC. And
that's what I was thinking. Like
just PC controls.
But just put it on Steam and like let people enjoy a game that we most likely will think is really good or think really highly of.
I really wonder if this will like spur like efforts to like get the re-release them if this sells well? ? Like I don't know. I have no idea. I would have much rather seen re-releases at this point. Even though I bought a new game and we certainly got it, but it's like this has a long way to go to really convince me. Like I like Valkyrie Profile and like all those games, so I mean I'll still play it.
Also, just even regardless of like visual quality or whatnot, I really like the Valkyrie Profile like combat system. And the first game and the second game, they're slightly different flavor of the same sort of combat system, which is a turn-based system. It's, if you're not familiar, Valkyrie Profile is like turn-based, but there's they stole the idea from Persona 5 and had buttons attached to different characters. Joking, but it's a really neat system that honestly some games have tried to emulate to not so much success.
Indivisible.
Trice tried to do that with that Exist archive.
I haven't played that.
It's okay. It's okay, but
and also just like I really like the Einherjar stories in the original Valkyrie Profile, which unfortunately they kind of got rid of in the second one. But it's just kind of like, I'm curious, if this is just some action RPG, even if it's decent, like in the Valkyrie profile skin, I kind of feel like that wouldn't have like the same spirit in a way. If it's just an action RPG.
I mean, they deliberately like titled this to be not carry the Valkyrie profile name. It's like, this is I guess it's like a spin-off of sorts. Like to just kind of, remember the last Valkyrie thing that did that. Instead of continuing on with a new game with a battle system that people liked, instead they made a spin-off with an action RPG twist to it. It was a Valkyrie Revolution.
Oh yeah.
Apparently that is just a cursed. I don't know, not IP. It's like a cursed reference.
They should have called this Valkyrie Revolution.
I'll reveal a big secret. I have written a guide for that game, and there is a total of 7 viewers of the entire lifespan of that guide.
That's me. Well, I'm one of them. I'm just kidding.
As an aside, Valkyrie Revolution is like one of the only games where I skipped every single cutscene. I probably have said this on a podcast in the past, but it's just that presentation of that game is so bad, and pretty much everything about that game is bad.
Yeah. So
thanks, Media.Vision.
More on them later.
I saw that name somewhere on the podcast doc. Maybe we'll revisit that.
Yeah, but there you go.
Like I said at the header, this is due out this year. Sony consoles and PC. Square is again on their very erratic kind of pace. Like they have no rhyme or reason, seemingly, to what consoles they release on and what PC storefront they release on. It's just whatever they feel like. And for this particular game, it's PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and Steam. This year, at some point, we don't know a window.
Valkyrie's back, baby.
The other new Square Enix project that was announced at the State of Play was something that I don't think we were expecting. We didn't have a trademark. We didn't have like hopes and dreams for this because it's a new IP. It is a new tactical RPG called the DioField Chronicle. It is a strategy RPG developed by Landcars, published by Square Enix.
Pardon?
Not Platinum Games.
Yeah, there was some misinformation around early on because the English website for this game had the Platinum logo, and that was probably just like a holdover from the Babylon's Fall website, because in the Japanese website it didn't have the Platinum logo, and then they are confirmed in the press release by Landcars. So
they probably just borrowed the template and like, whoops, they forgot to take out the logo.
But for this game, I was gonna say I was kind of okay. Then until I find out who's the main writer of this game, and I was like, I don't care about this game at all.
All right, some of the details. It is releasing this year, 2022, no specific time, for pretty much everything in this case, including Switch, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and PC via Steam. And it has a new, just like the Valkyrie Elysium, it had about a 2-minute trailer showing a pretty good mix of story and gameplay. And I guess I'll just take this one. My takeaway from this when I watched it later than everyone else because I was busy during the live stream. And when I was watching it, I first said one of the first things that I took away, obviously this is a strategy RPG. It has very often a isometric perspective. And it looks kind of like Fantasian in a way. Not quite the same art style, but like emulating a diorama style. Because obviously Fantasian actually like composited physical dioramas into the art. Where here it looks more like straight up CG models. But still...
And just to be clear, they literally say diorama style. Like that is intentional. It's not just your take on it. It's like what they were going for. So
right. So it's... And then the character models are kind of a similar sort of, I don't know how you say it, like they're low detail intentionally. So they're stylized, not chibi quite, but it's not quite chibi, not quite claymation. It's kind of like that, almost like PlayStation 1 CG render sort of style.
They kind of look like action figures almost.
Right. The trailer had some pretty good music. It showed both some direct gameplay on like the direct battle gameplay, as well as some like resource management, some sort of like war table sort of room. The gameplay system shows some sort of like time component where you can tell your units to like start or stop marching, which suggests that there's some like real-time strategy elements to this and not quite purely turn or phase based. And
you're freezing time like Dio.
And then the art director is from let's see, the character art is from, is it just Taiki?
Yeah, I think that's his kind of pen name.
All right, so like a stage name. He did previously done. I'm not familiar with this artist. Previously worked on Lord of Vermilion, who did the character art for this game. While the art director from Final Fantasies 12 and 13, Isamu Kamiko Kuro, did the concept art. And composers from Game of Thrones are working on the soundtrack.
Yeah,
so that's actually kind of an interesting thing. I thought this soundtrack was pretty distinct and pretty interesting, and not something I was familiar with. I've not watched Game of Thrones, so it seems like a really cool set of different talents from different places. Like this seems like it's a new IP with a new set of talent behind it. I think this trailer looks pretty neat. But I kind of want to go back to what Chow said. You said as soon as you learned who was writing this, you were no longer interested. So I am looking through the press release here. Who is writing this?
It is the writer from Fire Emblem Conquest and Fire Emblem Heroes and Fire Emblem Birthright and some
and
of the
a bunch of Sword Art games.
That's not a very good resume, to be honest with you, because the story in Fire Emblem Conquest is so god awful that you would just want to say that actually puts the game down.
I don't know if it's for a bunch of SAO games or just Fatal Bullet, but that writer is Yu Oshima, and on top of like the 3 Fire Emblem Fates games and their routes, that's also did Fire Emblem Heroes. So it's like it doesn't inspire confidence right away, because all the previous work this writer has done for games they're not really well written, I would say, especially Fire Emblem Fates, and I hear a lot of bad things about Fire Emblem Heroes from a story perspective. So it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up, and how hopefully. Who knows, with a way different setting that doesn't have like any sort of like it's not tied to like a big IP. Like it's not tied to Sword Art Online. It's not tied to Fire Emblem. So hopefully like a brand new IP away from all of that, with expectations from that, maybe will shake out better at the end. But on its face, the actual talent for this game is like seems to be solid, except for like this one aspect of like, well, who knows at this point. And the actual gameplay they shown is interesting, because it's not like a strictly like a strategy RPG with tiles. They got rid of tiles. There's like isometric, and they call it like a real-time tactical battle system. Like it seems to be very like fast-paced, on the fly, like not sort of like strictly action, but it definitely like looks like a game that's more active than what you would expect from a strategy RPG. I don't actually know if it's like.
Well, that's why I said more RTS like, but I don't know quite, because obviously we don't have a demo.
I even thought it looked something like real time with pause almost, where it's like you can control multiple units at once. They all act in real time. I don't know if there's a pause, but
people have equated it to like something like Growl Lancer.
Yeah. What do they call? Let me look it up here. What do they call it? It's like RTT. I'm trying to think what they call it.
Real time tactical battle system. RTTB.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right.
I just think it's Fire Emblem chasing after Free House's success, and they got the reject from their Fire Emblem writers.
Sure. Who knows? I'm infinitely more interested in this than like whatever the fuck Valkyrie Elysium was.
Yeah, same. And I'm also going to note that they gave a lot more details if you want to look into it, about story and characters. Like we have like character bios for like presumably 8 of the primary characters in the game, including like the one you play as, who is let me pull up. His name is Andreas, and like there's a lot of details about like the lore. This all takes place on like an island called DioField, and so on and so forth. There's also like there seems to be like a hub area, something like the monastery in Fire Emblem 3 Houses, where you can run around and talk to people. You can upgrade weapons. You can upgrade classes of your characters. There's like a skill system.
I do like how just the one of the, as far as I understand, the basic story premise seems very like uninspired, not necessarily bad, just kind of bland. So there is the Kingdom of Elatane, the Shovian Empire, and the Roatail Alliance. And basically the kingdom seems, based on the press release, to be positioned as like the sympathetic one. They're on an island that is rich in jade, which both the Empire and the Alliance are interested in. So they're like, so it feels very much like Fire Emblem, like Crimea or Salt Iron War and Triangle Strategy. I guess there's maybe only so many ways to set up a large nation consuming conflict. So maybe I shouldn't like nitpick at that too much, but I'm like, oh, I feel like I've read this premise before. So three major powers across this continent. Jade is apparently it's not salt and iron.
I highly recommend reading up Adam and Andrea's write-up on the news post for this game, because they shared a lot more details than I was even privy to. Like, I'm just scrolling down and I'm like, oh wow, there's actually they break down like the exact mechanics of this game. And like that wasn't like shown off at the live stream or even in the English press release. So
yeah, I had to gather a lot of this from the websites.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Now, one thing that's sort of interesting to me that I don't see, this does look like it's sort of aping Fire Emblem a bit. And I know people hate when you make comparisons like that, but there is like a movie on the Japanese website where it shows the character running around their base, and it like screams the monastery to me. It's got like the same viewpoint and perspective and everything, kind of like a hub world in the strategy RPG, but I don't see anything in the press release or in the websites or screenshots about like support conversations. So I don't know if you can romance anyone in this game. Which, if they're trying to chase the Fire Emblem audience, you feel like they should have that, but maybe not.
Maybe they're chasing me, who doesn't want that shit, and
I don't know.
Think about battles.
They're thinking us fossil Fire Emblem fans. Yeah,
fossil Fire Emblem fans. That's an episode title right there.
Okay, but yeah, I think this looks really neat. I'm always up for new ideas that's not in an established IP, and it's got like a diverse team of talent behind it, both from like familiar faces and new ones. And it's got like a unique art style. It's not trying to be like something that we've seen before, where it's like this is built in the vein of all those 16-bit RPGs that you played back in the day. It's like, no, it's something quite different. It has a style that it's hard. Like, just describing what it looked like took a little bit of prose to get there. So I just think this game looks unique in both how it looks and how it plays. Maybe not so much the story, but it's hard to judge that too harshly on just a brief synopsis of the premise. But I think it looks good, and I definitely agree that this seems just more interesting than and more something I want to play compared to Valkyrie Elysium. So both of those games are set for this year. So that's what Adam was talking about. Like, we now have 2 more games kind of on our list as candidates to, spend our time playing, but we don't know when they're going to land. Like, probably around holiday. Maybe one will appear earlier in the summer. We just don't know, but they're on the list now. So we have to be, I guess, ready for them.
It's kind of funny that I think a good number of people expected like maybe more Star Ocean news. Because it was revealed in a state of play, and it's like, it's coming out this year, so maybe. And then like Square Enix is like, well, no Star Ocean, but here's 2 more.
Yeah, that is weird, because like people pointed out right before the state of play, like whatever, it's like,
PlayStation.
The PlayStation store listing for Star Ocean, the Divine Force went up, and they can be pre-ordered. And it's like, oh, okay, they're gonna share more here. It's like, no, where is it? I'm like, what the fuck?
I guess I'm just now thinking that we didn't get any more details on that, and that's due this year too. So
where was it when we needed it most?
Does that have a date? I don't think it does, right?
Nope.
So we have like 3
we have a bunch of Square Enix games coming out this year. There's those 3, and then also there's Forspoken. That's the only one with a date.
All right, I guess we'll just, if we don't have any more topics on the DioField Chronicle, I think I might have misspoke. It's not DioField Chronicles. It's just the DioField Chronicle.
Only one Chronicle.
Yeah,
only one. No sequels.
And then this is a game that I think people were kind of expecting from this State of Play stream, because it's shown up in previous ones. We got an update with Forspoken. Now, before the State of Play, we did learn that Forspoken was being delayed from its original May 24th release date back to October 11th. So it's basically falling into that early holiday time frame. So that was already known. It was announced on Twitter. It is still planning to release for both PlayStation 5 and PC on the new October 11th date. And then at the State of Play, we got a lengthy new, basically kind of gameplay montage trailer. Also about 2 minutes. And I think the previous times we've spoken about Forspoken on the podcast, we've kind of been lukewarm on it, mainly because a lot of the story setting, the isekai nature of the protagonist, I wasn't really gelling with. But from my initial impression from this is that since this is a little bit more combat gameplay focused, I was vibing with this trailer a little bit more, just because I'm like, all right, that stuff that I don't really care about is not in the forefront. Just how does this game play as kind of a more magic focus, more spell casting, more mid-range combat sort of thing than what we typically see in these action games. So I thought this looked pretty kind of neat. This was the best showing of the game for me. Not like stellar, supreme, most hyped game of the year for me, but I think this was the game's best showing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think the late October will obviously do them good. Obviously, I never want a game to release to be like super hot and be like, oh shit, we really have to meet deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really, I mean, very interested in this how this game shapes up. Like, I still don't think the marketing for this game really is where it needs to be to like sway over a lot of people, because right now it all feels very barren and like there's like not a lot of meat so far to like what this game actually has, in my opinion. Like, we know it has spellcasting, but a lot of like the open world gameplay that it's shown, like the actual open world itself feels very barren and empty.
It's like, what are we gonna be doing in the open world?
Yeah.
There's this one scene in the trailer that shows Freya like galloping across like a field and it just has like 3 goblins in it, and just kind of, I don't know, it just felt wrong.
And especially to me, it's like, well, this is a next gen exclusive, right? So like, nothing they've shown to me seems like something that can only be done on current gen hardware.
Well, you guys are more down on this than I was. But
I'm like, I'm gonna play regardless, like, because I'm interested.
I don't know if I'm gonna play it.
Like, I'm interested.
I actually thought the Game Informer video was a bit better than the trailer. They had the Game Informer did a video showing some of the spell gameplay and like more direct, like how the user interface works and whatnot in terms of how do you actually play the game. So that was more interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. I like the one thing I really liked from the trailer is the stupid ice surfboard, and I was like, all right, if they have more like fun powers like that, like you can mix and match, I'd be down for it, especially if it's like traversal based. Like I really want to know like how flexible the spell system is when you're trying to like force interactions with one another. Like can you like mix 2 spells together that actually has like an impact on the environment in a meaningful way to take out opponents, and even just traversing the world. So there's a lot of potential there. And if that delay helps them reach that potential, then sure, I mean, there's enough games coming out.
All right, I'm looking through the press release to see if there's anything else really to dig into for Forspoken. I don't really think so.
They re-released, like, there's a new key art. They have like more new infographics on like the special editions because it's got a new release date. I don't think anything else changed though.
I feel like I'm a little bit over the tagline is like "She will rise," like that. They could not pick like a more uninteresting tagline to me. I don't know. I feel like I've seen that with Tomb Raider. I feel like I've seen that in other places. Like, I do not have this attachment to this character. I think the world has potential, but just nothing about the character itself has really sung to me. And like the way they wore this press release, like it will also showcase Frey's newfound confidence as she rises to the challenge to save Athia. Remember when this was called Project Athia?
It's like that's why I'm more interested like in the gameplay more so than like anything else, because I think marketing around like story it was more often not like is really uninteresting or sucks.
Well, I can't even remember like the last story trailer we got. They said Frey had to defeat like these champions that had like this weird title. What were they called?
Because at the end of the day, if I'm gonna play it, like I'll experience the story for myself and like come to my own conclusions about it. Like nothing about what marketing says about the story is gonna like interest me at all. Like I'm like the what I'm gonna be doing in this game interests me more so than like what is the story of this game. It's like, I don't know. I'm gonna see it anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, I just more broadly, I kind of agree that like we were even saying about like DioField Chronicles, like the way that they present the story in like some marketing press release, like almost doesn't matter because we'll see it if you play it, like how it actually like comes across and how it works. Like how they market it is just sort of whatever.
I'm really like I hate marketing campaigns that like super focus on story. Like I get it, I understand why it has to happen, but I could not be more or less interested in like that type of stuff because like I just want to know what I'm gonna be doing in the game. That's like whenever there's like a trailer that comes out that actually doesn't show like gameplay and what people are actually doing on a moment to moment basis in the game, it ticks me off.
Thank you, Valkyrie Elysium, for actually showing gameplay.
Yeah, at least it did that.
That's true. That's true for both of these games. It's like, thank you. At least it shows gameplay. Whether I'll like it or not, at least I have a good idea of like. Can you imagine if we got the Valkyrie Elysium trailer, except instead of the trailer that we got, it was just like like a CG teaser, 30-second teaser, and then the logo. And
I think people would be way more hype on it.
Yeah, exactly. But when they actually when the rubber meets the road and you actually see that way later down the line, I'd be more pissed.
Yeah.
You know? Like at the very least, like I have my expectations set for it. I know what it is now. I'm still gonna play it, whether whether I liked what I saw or not. I'm still interested in like seeing what the fuck this is, and like they already have my money. Like I'm already gonna go fucking play the game, whether it's a review code or I'm gonna buy it for myself. Like I'm like at the end of the day, I know what I'm doing in that game rather than like wondering for months, like, oh man, well, like I wonder what that Valkyrie game is going to look like, for like what 6 months or so. It's like, and that also like is the Star Ocean trailer. At least right away, like we know what Star Ocean 6 looks like what you're going to be doing.
Showed a lot of gameplay.
Yeah, like I respect that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big pieces of news that we had 2 weeks ago was the announcement for Soul Hackers 2 from the surprise Atlas countdown and release this year in August. In the last week, Atlas West basically shared, Adam, I believe this was a website update followed by a press release with a lot of the same information.
Okay, no, this is dumb. So there's a Japanese. So let me start at the beginning. So when they announced the game 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, the Japanese Atlas, the Japanese company, put up the website that had pretty much all the details on like, here's the story, here are the 5 main characters, here's what's going on. And Kite actually took all that and translated it for us, like the character introductions, the story premise. Basically, you have these 2 manifestations of this AI supercomputer thing that they revive these devil summoners who are basically in conflict with each other. And then these revived devil summoners, they get soul hacked. That's how they're revived, hence the name of that game. And then they end up working together. And that's basically, in a nutshell, the premise. And then 2 weeks later, Atlas Japan put out a press release that basically had all that same info, like just in press release form. There was a tiny little bit more about like you go into these like realms that are like manifestations of the city, but otherwise it was pretty much just the same details. And then at the same time that Japanese press release went out, Game Informer got early access to the same details and sent out like the English version of those screenshots. And then like 12 hours later, Atlas West, the English company, sent out the rest. Like, so we got some new screenshots, and that's mostly what this update is a bunch of new screenshots. But in terms of details, just a few tiny things. It's all on the website. Like we've written, I've got all the details there shared directly from Atlas. But it's mostly the screenshots are new.
Yeah, the only ongoing thing going on with this, like they have these daily,
they're doing
streams. That's not. It's the weird thing is like it's not even demons. Like sure, like the first one was like Jack Frost, and like today was like Dormarth. But like the second day was like it's a pizza place or partly that we hang out at. It's like all right, cool, So it's not just that, but it's very much like the SFT5 Demon of the Day type marketing deal. Just in some locales, I guess.
So we have a news post up on the site that basically goes through the 5 characters, their voice actors in Japanese, their bios, what devil summoners are, what the agents of Ion are, what the soul hack refers to. So basically all the stuff that Adam mentioned that basically got all synthesized from the website information, the press release, the Atlas West detail later.
So I guess I should clarify. Now the details we had 2 weeks ago were basically translations of the Japanese website. And now it's like these are officially like the Atlas West, like official English descriptions.
Like,
You know,
Gotcha.
I think
it's the same details, but
I think the sauce of these like details is like the screenshots for like demons in here, like and like kind of comparing it to Soul Hackers 1. Like, for example, there's no more loyalty system like in Soul Hackers 1. And then the weird thing is like when like obviously we have like the basic physical like damage and then like gun damage, like the encompass physical damage. Then you have the 4 elements of fire, ice, lightning, and wind for it, and then they don't have like specific like stats for or like resistances to like light or dark. It like because that purple thing is for ailments. So it's interesting. I'm trying to think if there's any sort of like media for this game right that has like even shown any like light or dark spells, or are those like gone? Who knows? I don't know. That was the weird thing to me.
Well, I feel like
there's also a screenshot showing like their comp weapon, and that can be like that can affect your attacks, and then like there's some screenshots about like the demon itself and its abilities. So it seems like your character abilities will be based off of both the demon you have equipped to them as well as like the status of their comp.
Yeah. So like it's just like this all the screenshots is just like us Soul Hackers wonders going to the nitty gritty of like, okay, what does this game actually have? Or that we're just like sniffing out.
Having not played Soul Hackers 1, like I don't, and I feel like that's going to be a vote that a lot of people interested in this game are going to be in.
Yeah.
I wish Atlas was not so PC adverse. Like they did the Persona 4 thing, and I don't know. It'd be cool to be able to say like we're making a sequel to Soul Hackers. Here's the sequel on PC. Same with like the Valkyrie thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just spoiled or asking too much.
It's going to be bad enough because in a year's time you won't even be able to buy Soul Hackers like at all.
Right.
Except secondhand like parts.
So yeah, all the new we obviously have the announcement post on the website as well as the follow post, which does have, like Adam said, a lot of screenshots, but also synthesizes all the proper official information for the game as it's come out since the game's announcement 2 weeks ago. Here's a smaller little piece of news that kind of was surprising. We obviously know about the upcoming remaster for Chrono Cross coming next month. Not sure if it's related to that or not, but Chrono Trigger on PC has included a surprise update to add ultra wide support and adjust how auto battle works in that game with a new like the turbo mode. So it's just interesting because when Chrono Trigger released on PC back in I believe 2018, it released in kind of a pretty shitty state, and then they immediately like worked to clean it up over the next couple of months, and then it didn't have any updates. So, like the furthest of those updates was back in August of 2018. And now here they are just updating it again with some just nice additional features that weren't really asked for, but are just kind of nice to have. So Chrono Trigger is still on PC, and Alex actually in his news post for this calls it like the definitive version of the game. Some people might not agree
arguably
with that. Yeah,
which I agree. It's pretty close. There's just a few small things. Like if you really just cannot stand its UI, then sure.
Does it do the music looping thing? Do you know?
It doesn't. It does do the music looping thing.
All right, so like basically when you re-enter the an overworld after a battle, the whatever track was playing will restart, and that's something that a lot of these PC ports from SquareSoft titles have struggled with. But just,
I mean, like, this all seems like really cool, especially the ultra wide support. That's really interesting in the 21:9 aspect ratio. Unfortunately, this new update also introduced new bugs to it.
It did.
Yeah, like for example. The one I heard is introduces a bug where no numbers higher than 999 are visible, golden menus, cost of items, and damage numbers in some locales. Like that's a fun new bug. And then there's also like some graphical bugs, like some parts of the UI and like are blurrier than what it was then. So
and people are also wondering like, would they update Chrono Trigger now? Does this mean something? Like, are they going to port it to Switch? Is what people want to know.
Yeah, this is a weird thing too, because this came out like I think earlier in the day of that state of play. I'm like, or like the day before that state of play. I'm like, oh, are they like gearing up to like maybe put it on like a console, and just have it be announced there, and then like the real announcement is like it's coming to console. But that didn't happen. Instead, we got a lot more Square Enix things.
We're totally gonna get those
Cross on Switch.
we're totally going to get those pixel remasters on console any day now.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen eventually, but they just put out Final Fantasy VI, and they're still like doing some bug fixes for it. So I imagine what they're going to do for the pixel remasters is basically patch up Final Fantasy VI, patch up whatever else they want to do for the other PC versions, and then like, all right, time to start working on ports. So I think it's going to be a bit, maybe.
Yeah, Chow in our Discord put up the tweet that actually lays out like a lot of the things, some of the things Chrono Trigger update broke. Let's say, so that like just to read it out for folks, like menus are still stretched images, pixel fonts are really blurry, menu sprites are blurry, high resolution pointer finger cursor.
The thing is though is like maybe my standards are low, but I'm just glad that like if you want to suggest that someone's plays Chrono Trigger, it's there on Steam and you can probably run it on your laptop. Where if it was still on just DS, it'd be like, grab your DS. I hope you can find a cart because I don't know what those go for secondhand if you can't buy it digitally. Things like that.
No one is saying this shouldn't have not be on PC or anything. There's not to say that like, oh, they shouldn't have never gone with this endeavor at all. It's just saying that like there's still things to be worked out in it, and if you want to play it, it's still fine. There's just like be aware that
basically like you said, awareness.
No one is implying this shouldn't have happened. It's
just frustrating because it's just in juxtaposition to like the conversations with Final Fantasy Tactics or Valkyrie Profile. It's like, please, just even if it's a shoddy like ROM dump, I'll play it. I don't know.
Well, is it like it's saying like the Final Fantasy 6 pixel remaster never came out? Like would you still be okay with only the Final Fantasy 6 thing being on PC or being that mobile port? So like,
no, I would never touch that mobile port.
So like
those sprites.
So it's kind of a weird thing of like there has to be a middle ground of like, look, it's cool that it's available here, but it really does deserve better, and it got it with Pixel Remaster. But like, I would rather, I'm glad that they did Pixel Remaster instead of having to like live with like the fucking mobile version of Final Fantasy 6 forever.
Yeah, for sure. Like, if you want to play Final Fantasy 6, the most convenient way is to play this version that no one really likes.
Yeah, it's not like they didn't do that with Chrono Trigger here. Of like, oh, they fucking put a mobile port of Chrono Trigger. I mean, it is on mobile versions, but it's not like significantly different than like what the original version of that was. Unlike FF6 mobile port or version.
And while we're on this topic, I just want to note that in the last week or maybe 2 weeks, Square did open a website for the Final Fantasy 35th anniversary. Now, details about what are specifically going to be what you can expect from this are basically up to just, your imagination right now, I suppose. Right now, the website is basically talking about 2 games, and that is the Chocobo GP game and Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, which in itself is kind of, if you've been following the news cycle about Stranger of Paradise, which releases next week, is kind of like a celebration title for the series that references a lot of older areas of the game. We talked about Andrea and Alex's work, kind of trying to suss out all the different homages and references and inspirations from the series history that are going into the locations of that game. First, it was all speculation, but then it's over the last couple of weeks has become official. So that's kind of a cool anniversary project. But if I guess I'll just cut to the chase. If they're opening up a 35th anniversary website, maybe they've got some big things planned for this year. Don't know how likely that is, but they do say.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that this would be, one of these new titles technically would be pixel remaster for consoles as well. So, like a pixel remaster collection or something for consoles.
So it says new title on the 35th anniversary website. New titles. It shows the logos for Chocobo GP and Stranger of Paradise, and then with the ominous and more. So I guess they will add to this, but what will they add? We don't know yet.
I don't know. Stranger of Paradise shaping up to be cool. Chocobo GP, after all the reporting that when people finally got their hands on it, not a great start for the 35th anniversary on that end.
I heard it has like a gacha currency and it expires.
Yeah.
Apparently, only the currency you get for free expires. The currency you buy doesn't.
That makes it all better.
No, I mean it's
yeah.
And I know you weren't defending it, but just like even with that correct clarification, I'm like, oh, that's still shit. I don't know.
Yeah. And then just the general UI of like when people want to
I think I mentioned on a podcast.
even if it's just for free, like no one deserves to like fucking boot up this game and be like, oh yeah, it looks literally like a fucking mobile game UI, or especially when the people paid like the full $40 for it.
I think I mentioned on a previous podcast when they revealed that this game. So they revealed, I think it was in a Nintendo Direct, like a Japanese Nintendo Direct, that like Cloud is what they said was Cloud you can get from the season pass, and I was like, wait, there's a season pass, and I was thinking like DLC because that's what we usually think about when you think of season pass, and then they were very vague on it, and it was very confusing, and then eventually like you like in a corner of the Japanese website like, oh, it's like a battle pass. That sort of makes more sense, but also sort of doesn't. Like I didn't realize this game had a battle pass, but as you just said, like there's all this freemium interface in this $50 or is it $40 game? $50 game?
$50, yeah. Which I just want to stress that the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC is out later this month for $25.
That's a shitload of tracks.
Yeah, so you can either pay $50 for Chocobo GP, which treats you like you're playing a mobile game that's free to play, or you could spend half that and get a ton of tracks for a kart racer, which you definitely have if you own a Switch.
I'm sitting here saying like I don't actually have that, but I also have no real life friends, so that's why.
That's why we're your friends.
Oh, okay. I feel better now. So we didn't have a section on this podcast to specifically call out Chocobo GP, but yeah, it's not been a good week in terms of the consensus. Go ahead.
Can I say something that's a bit unrelated? Well, kind of related to the 35th anniversary website. So just the other day, I was looking back on it, but there was this Final Fantasy XI website that Square put out late last year in the lead up to the 20th anniversary. And I saw when it went up and they said, oh, we're going to have a ton of interesting stuff that we're going to upload to this. And I just kind of forgot about it. But just the other day, I saw it again and it's kind of surprising. Like you look through it and there's like tons of like interviews from like all sorts of Square Enix staff. Like you have Tanaka, you have Yosuke Saito, you have Yutaka Kuwamata, Matsukawa, Yoshinori Kitase. Hell, I mean, there's even a Kawazu interview and a Nomura interview, and there's like all sorts of interesting stuff here that I think that if we're talking about like the series anniversary, even if you never have any intention of playing Final Fantasy XI, there's some really, really fascinating like tidbits in these interviews. I think any Square Enix fan really should like take the time to like read over some of these because it's really fascinating stuff.
That's the Final Fantasy XI 20th anniversary website.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good shout out.
I think a lot of people like forget like how transformative FF11 was for Square. Back in the day, like that was like really
one of the few games that Square Enix still makes internally.
Yeah, it was a really bold new frontier, and the fact that it's still getting new content, new updates to this day is like sort of a miracle.
Just a few months ago, they had an update where they raised the sub-level cap, which used to be half of your main level for the longest time. And then they're like, okay, we're going to raise the level cap for now from level 50 to 51, which doesn't sound like a lot, except there's a ton of classes in 11 where the skills that they got had been balanced around, well, we don't want this to be available for a sub job if you have it as a sub job. So we'll
deliberately put it at 51.
Yeah, so suddenly all of these like new jobs are now suddenly viable as a sub job that weren't really viable before. Maybe viable is not the correct term, but it's like you got stuff like that. They've been when was the last for Aegis Resurgence? Because they've been doing like story content for 11 with this Voracious Resurgence thing for a while now, and it's like, yeah.
And I know I've fallen off since playing it last year, but it was really cool how the new story content that they've been putting in over the last 2 years over that has been integrated with the existing story. It's not just like something tacked onto the end. They're like really trying to like flesh out the areas that exist in the game, the characters that exist in the game, and really like thresh it through the game very organically. So I thought that was really cool from what I had played of it.
Yeah, there's a nice find. I really want to read it sometime. Thanks, James. Yeah, we should definitely put a link to this up on the podcast article. I think a lot there. Probably a lot of people don't know about this, to be honest.
All right, we've got a good slate of remaining news for the podcast from this week. A lot of this is release dates, but we'll just talk about, and we'll stop on the ones that we're most interested in. The first one is one that I think a lot of people here have already seen, but we'll just declare it here at the start, and that is that Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp has been delayed indefinitely. It was originally supposed to release on April 8th, and this is due to the world events involving Russia and Ukraine. So not specific to the product itself, but just specific to the environment politically that we find ourselves in. Indefinitely, so go ahead.
Not much else to say besides, like, I've seen some people trying to say, oh, well, what's the point of this? It's not going to change anything about the situation, but it's like,
it's just bad taste.
Yeah, it's bad taste. And people are saying, oh, well, why? I don't know. There's some people trying to make this political when obviously it's Nintendo just trying to be respectful of the situation. And it's kind of weird seeing the reaction.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a good time to like. It's just not the right. The state of the world is not is like is not good right now.
This is kind of
this is what they leave a very, very poor impression on like everyone involved, and like I can't imagine it just feels good to even be working on this project and be like, oh yeah, we should still stick with our original.
Well, the worst part about this was
I can't imagine
wasn't it already delayed to the previous release date?
Yeah, this will be the second delay, and this is not the first time the series has
a cursed release date.
Yeah, absolutely cursed, because the original Advance Wars came out in North America on September 10th, 2001.
Just a day before 9/11. And I was just trying to remember, isn't there a faction in this game that's basically the Russians, and the game starts with them invading somebody else? That's how the game starts.
I do remember I only played the original Advance Wars, like the first one on GBA, and the nations aren't clearly, but they're like inspired by.
Yeah, and that's how the game starts on one of them, I think.
Yeah.
And
people who say like delaying this isn't going to solve the world problem, so just do it. It's like, well, Nintendo's not saying that it will solve the world problems. Like, that's not the optics here.
Also, they don't want to release this and then not advertise it, because there's no way in hell they're going to advertise a game like this that makes War out to be like playtime, especially with the new art style, which makes the soldiers look like actual toy soldiers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
when there's an actual war going on in Europe.
This sort of thing is like, it's not like it real life is still happens. People have to make responsible decisions. Like, is this in good faith to release it? Like, for example, Metal Gear Solid 2. Kojima had to like rework that whole ending because 9/11 happened. And think about how to work around that. So it's just it's very tragic what's happening in Ukraine, and people should just respect this dude. Like, respect this decision. Just period. Like, people are fucking suffering out there, dude. Come on now.
Yeah, man, and like, we'll see it this year likely, but we don't know for certain. And just it'll come out when it comes out. We have a DLC for a strategy RPG that released last year. That is Disciples Liberation. The Paths to Madness DLC will release on March 24th. I know, another game I wanted to get to, but never had time for. So nothing much more to say about that. Lost Judgment, the Kaito Files. Obviously, Lost Judgment was a highly regarded release from last year for the site. The Kaito Files Story Expansion DLC launches at the end of the month on March 28th. So I have not played Lost Judgment. I think Josh is still the only one here that's played it. Now that I finished Yakuza, I have no excuse. I've got the Yakuza series down. Lost Judgment's next. What does this DLC excite you at all, Josh?
I love Kaito. I'm very interested to see I think this happens after the events of Lost Judgment, so it's sort of like a sequel, maybe a mini sequel or expansion to that. And then they laid out like it like I was reading through this press release, so like, oh, okay, what's going on, and then like there's a bullet point that says, "Trust your gut. No need for Yagami's fancy gadgets here. Kaito has his own sensory-based sleuthing style Tap into Kaito's primal focus to literally sniff out clues, identify subsets, and crack the case with his instincts. So that's Kaito's a really goofy character. I love him. I'm very, very excited to get back and see what they do with this.
Man, I can't believe that Kaito is a bloodhound.
It reminds me of Kina and Fantasian, where it's like, you smell like the forest, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So
who
knows?
So that looks, yeah, it's looking like a meaty, like you said, almost expansion like edition.
Yeah, I'm thinking in my mind this is like 6 to 7 hours long, maybe. I don't know.
$30.
Yeah.
So
hopefully it is meaty.
This one is another delay for this game that I feel like we've mentioned this game a few times in our like rundown section of the podcast. King Arthur Knight's Tale. It has been delayed again. This is a kind of a grim dark strategy RPG based on the Legend of King Arthur. It's been delayed to April 26th. It was originally supposed to launch in February and then got delayed to March, and now it's being delayed to April. And I will say that whenever a game has these like repeated short delays, I think that that's almost more damning to my like impression than just like a single long delay, like what Forspoken had, just going from May to October. Like I don't know what your business sense is, what your fiscal calendar must look like, but it just doesn't seem good. Where it's like it seems like it's coming in really hot if it's being delayed on like a monthly basis. So just take your time. Like I know, like me saying that isn't going to change what your fiscal responsibilities are, but it's just not a good look. But yeah, another game to slot into April. That's kind of a different take from the rest in there. We got a release date for Dolmen. If you don't remember what this is, I know that Adam's originally heard of this game. Was it in the Nissan Direct from 2020? It was in one of those like summer things that all bleed together.
It was the Prime Matter.
Oh, Prime Matter.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Prime Matter.
That Coke Media thing that was really, really weird.
Coke Media, that's what it was.
The one that was like mostly just interviews, right? And not really much games on it? Or was that another thing?
No, I think that's exactly it.
Okay.
I will. So Dolmen is it's releasing on May 20th for PlayStation, Xbox, PC, this gen and last gen. We got a trailer for it. This looks kind of like a Eurojank action RPG. The trailer. The trailer. Yeah. Well, it looks Eurojank. I'm not saying that that's what it is, but the trailer for it is like a little over a minute of footage from the same boss fight.
Look, I'm watching this and I'm thinking Brazilian Warframe.
It does kind of look like Warframe, but like the trailer is not like a montage of environments or of characters or of anything like that. It's just like snippets from this one boss fight in this one arena, and it's like, okay, it didn't do really much to excite me. I don't know. I hate looking at a trailer and being like, this doesn't excite me, but that's kind of what I saw here. But yeah, it's coming out in May, so we'll see what else is around there and whether or not we'll have a chance to take a look at it.
You're gonna play this and Elex 2 back to back as punishment.
I'm hoping Elex 2 will fit into like April for me, when nothing else is coming out. Once I get through like Stranger Paradise and Triangle Strategy, I'm kind of hoping like April, please stay light so that I can kind of clear out my very quickly growing backlog for the year. Outward. This is a game that I did review back in 2018. Is getting a definitive edition that is launching for current consoles and PC in May. So Outward is a indie like survival, almost Souls-like RPG that is completely co-op, which is the reason I played it, which is actually pretty cool. And since its release back in 2019, okay, so it was 2019, it's had a few DLC additions and a lot of like hot fixes, bug updates, things like that. Basically, it's getting nicely packaged into a definitive edition that is releasing in May. We don't have a date. And I thought fairly highly of this game. I think basically if you have a friend that's looking to play kind of a survival-esque game that's more framed like an RPG and less like a Rust or an Ark survival or whatever, I think this game's pretty cool. So I have good memories of it. And I think it's cool that Nine Dots is like a Canadian studio that has like 20 people or something like that, maybe 30. So it sounds like, based on their announcement for this definitive edition, it's like this is the last hurrah for Outward before they move on to their next project. So I think that's pretty cool. We talked about in a previous podcast in the last month or so about how Disgaea 6 is getting a complete edition launching for PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC. It now has a release date. It is going to release on June 28th for those consoles. Not much more to say there, I don't believe. Gotham Knights. I miss you, George. Gotham Knights has a release date. It'll release on October 25th. So here we go. We're starting to fill out our October calendars with Forspoken and now Gotham Knights. So we have a release date for this one. It is coming out for Xbox consoles, Sony consoles, and PC.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't show any new footage of this release date announcement or a release date trailer or anything.
Yeah, it was literally just a tweet. It's like, hey, here's the date. Like, oh,
all right. Well, who knows? We're gonna see that again, but there you go. Head to head, Forspoken or Gotham Knights. Which side are you on?
Probably Forspoken for me. Just
Gotham
Knights.
Gotham Knights seems interesting because it seems like it's a single player. People. This was after Avengers. People were wondering if this was going to be another service game, but no, it's like a single player RPG with 4 different characters. And does it have a co-op mode? I forget. I think you can do all of it in co-op.
Yeah, I think there's a co-op angle to it. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
So hopefully it's one of those cool co-op modes that feels like you're not missing out if you're not doing co-op, but it just adds to the experience if you do. That'd be nice.
I guess that was our last release date. So starting to get our calendar filled out, a lot of DLCs and a lot of updated additions to games that some of us have already played with in terms of Outward and Disgaea 6. One sales update, and that is for a game that we talked about pretty extensively on last year's Game of the Year podcast, and that is Ender Lilies. It has surpassed 600,000 units sold, and it is getting a physical release for PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch via limited run games. So I don't think any of us here are really big gung-ho physical collectors, except maybe James.
I am, actually.
Oh, you are? Okay, honest. Never mind. I take it back. We have numerous physical collectors.
I do like collecting physical copies, but I've already played it on PC, so it's like
I'm bad with physicals. Basically, what I do is I would buy a physical edition of one game, then I would buy it again digitally and keep the physical completely sealed so its value stays higher.
So you're in deep. Okay. Yep. So Ender Lilies obviously was a game that we thought pretty highly of last year. I know that I think Chow, James, and Adam have played it. I don't know if Chow's played it.
Oh, I played
a bit of it.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's apparently sold really well, and we'll have a physical version available soon. I know people have different opinions on limited run games, but they would be the publisher for that.
It's I'm limited run games stupid, but I guess this is in their line that might end up eventually at storefronts too, not just through their website.
And finally, we are going to talk again. We kind of I don't know, alluded to this earlier about Media.Vision. So Media.Vision launched a new Twitter account in the last week and shared that they have 5 titles in development. Now, I am not savvy enough to know why this should be exciting, so maybe I'll hand it off to someone that brought it up earlier, Adam or James. Not James, Adam or Josh. If you hear that Media.Vision has 5 titles in development, does this excite you?
Let's fucking go!
Kind of.
Valkyrie Chronicles, free, please. Ported
Valkyrie Revolution 2.
Let's go!
Okay, so Media.Vision is
sound
originally known...
The sound that made Chow do was just God.
Okay, so Media.Vision is originally known as the developer of Wild Arms, although that's less and less relevant. Now, Media.Vision is basically a Japanese developer. They don't publish their own games, but they develop for a lot of other publishers. They've made some really pretty good games like Digimon Cyber Sleuth, and they were the main developers on Valkyrie Chronicles 3 and 4, or at least they contributed heavily to 4 for Sega. So they've made some pretty darn good games, but then they've also made Valkyrie Revolution and Summon Night 6, which is okay at best. Valkyrie Revolution is not okay at best. And they've also made Shining Resonance Refrain, which is also a pretty bad game, to be honest. So basically, they have some highlights and some lowlights. And now we know they're making 5 more games. I think they said there was a Famitsu interview and a Dengeki interview. And I caught bits and pieces of it. They mentioned like they can't reveal, some of these games because they're based on the publisher gets to choose that, right? So we don't know what they are. I don't know if they're going to get into any sort of self-publishing. I don't know if I saw that because they've never like published a game. They're just a developer. There was something like they're working with Unreal Engine, which is obviously more and more popular. So yeah, I think I said this before the Digimon Con, or maybe right afterwards. I expect that Media.Vision is working on the next Digimon story game, whatever it is. That's just my guess.
All right, it's on record now.
If it's fucking 5 new games, I imagine it has to be one of them.
Right?
Yeah, you've got high odds.
Pretty good chance. Pretty good chance here.
I don't know what else. Is Sega gonna try to dabble Valkyria again? Who knows? I don't know what else. They showed off a few screen concept art, early concept art.
There's like it's like a cell shaded like abandoned post-apocalyptic like highway with some cars. We saw the backside of a character. They were very hedging and saying like any of this could change at any moment. So like it was very like in progress.
Well, I'd like to get a. I think some parts of the interview were like the earliest we can show any of this is like next year.
A year from now, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's still they're still very much deep in development. So who knows? But Godspeed, I guess. That's a lot of projects to be taking on. At the moment.
I wasn't expecting 5.
Yeah, I would say maybe like 2, maybe 3 even, but 5? Shit, what the fuck are you guys doing? So I don't know. I have really no idea what to expect from Media.Vision.
Media.Vision, even though we kind of mentioned some of their lowlights, they've made some pretty darn good games. So
it is crazy. It is crazy. We haven't really seen anything from them since Valkyrie Chronicles 4, and that was like 4 years ago. Yeah.
Oh wait, they did Valkyrie Chronicles 4?
I think, as far as I understand it, they were pretty much the primary developer on Valkyrie Chronicles 3. I think 4 was maybe a bit half and half, like half Sega, half Media.Vision, but they were at least pretty key on it, like for sure.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, what are the odds of them developing a new Sakura Wars game? It's like, could I pray?
Maybe Sega gets them to work on Sakura Wars. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. But who knows? Who knows? Like, would you want to see a Media.Vision Sakura Wars, Chow?
I do actually. I just think they make good games except action RPGs. Just don't let them
turn-based Sakura Wars.
They used to be turn-based. They used to be like turn-based tactical RPGs.
Oh right, they were. I forgot the new one is different.
Yeah, right. As long as you don't let them make action RPGs, we're in good hands.
So hopefully 4 of these games are not action RPG, and then we throw in 1 action RPG just for fun.
Valkyrie Revolution 2, let's go!
There you go.
No, please, God, no.
And then Chow has to mandatorily make a plate or
write a new guide for those 9 people will watch it.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see.
I did want to mention, though, I guess kind of as an aside, that we did get an announcement in regards to like another New Game Plus Expos happening at the end of the month. So I guess we're going to be getting some new announcements soon.
Yes. Oh yeah, there's a couple of different events coming up this month. There is a Monster Hunter event, which considering Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak is supposed to come out this summer, like, hey, maybe it's time for a release date.
Yeah, probably.
It'll also be October. Or no, it's not summer. Never mind. It'll not be October.
When I saw that abbreviation, I thought James was talking about a Neo Geo Pocket emulator.
Why is that what you immediately thought of?
That's so good.
What's the names? I don't know. Maybe I just never paid attention to this expo, maybe.
But there's also the New Game Plus Expo event, which has like NIS America, Idea Factory, Axis, I think Natsume, and a few other of those like
Inti Creates, NeoWiz, Playism.
Yeah.
Oh, we're finally going to get those Playism announcements that they canceled their live stream for because they really, really pissed off the VTuber fan base.
Look, they got Nosy out on PC finally, so they don't need to make any more announcements. It's okay.
And then there's also like no one cares about this except maybe me because it's probably indie stuff. But there's also one of those Games Radar events coming up soon. I actually forget the date of it. So there might be
like March 24th.
Yeah, so there might be a few interesting events or interesting announcements from that.
So what do you guys think? What do you guys think? New Game Plus Expo. Are we going to get actual NIS titles announced for localization, or are they going to announce Kuro in advance? Even though it's not going to come until
no way. There's no.
I don't think they're going to announce Kuro before Zero even comes out. I don't think so.
I think you just get a new trailer for Zero, and that's it.
It's just be Disgaea 6.
I don't actually think it's going to happen, but it would be hilarious if they did.
I hope they do, actually. I know, like, you're missing a couple games for context, but I feel like if they just keep, like, waiting for all the games to come out, we're going to wait, like, friggin' 5 years. It's like, you know?
Look, you just need to accept that the West isn't going to get Kuro until the entire, like, late 2024, when, guess what? Kuro 3 will be out. And then, like, it's probably going to be the end of the arc.
Kuro 4 is going to be
in terms of NIS, actual like NIS games, though, there's Galleria. We're still waiting on that.
Yomawari 3.
There's Yomawari 3. There's that Boken Meshi like picnic survivalist RPG.
Yeah.
So there's a few that they could announce just from the NIS side of things. Oh, Void Terrarium 2.
Void Terrarium 2. There's also a couple of other games that they might not bring over. Like there's like, it sucks that they never bring any of their VNs over because I've heard some good things about some of them. And there's like a few that came out recently that apparently people like over there. And it's just like, NIS America just never touches them, which makes sense.
I'm sort of surprised that NIS, like Japan, doesn't have someone else do it. Like sort of like how Idea Factory pretty much has access to all of their Otome stuff. And, you know, Idea Factory International sticks to the RPG stuff. So...
Well, you gotta wonder though, like how much of it is NIS America is like plate being full, but also you have to consider that any localization that NIS America does for NIS Japan titles, NIS Japan also has to like set aside a certain amount of manpower on their end to make sure that everything gets implemented correctly.
Yeah,
so it's like I don't know, localization's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with that stated, that kind of covers what we had to do for the podcast. So a lot of the state of play announcements, it seems like some good, some bad from there. Lots of things to look forward to. Obviously, we've got Stranger of Paradise launching on, the 18th? So we'll be able to talk about it next week. Earlier, if you... What, yeah?
Launching on the 18th if you're buying a physical copy on console. Launching on the 15th if you buy a digital copy on console. And launching on the 17th if you buy a digital copy on PC.
Dude, I was so pissed this morning. I was so pissed this morning because I totally forgot that the early access period was different for console and PC.
Yeah, I was mentioning that in the staff chat earlier. That's the whole reason why I was at that at my local game store yesterday, trying to figure out if they knew when they were going to get copying. Because it's like, man, I still want to play it on. Yeah, I still want to go on for PC, but it's like I'm not going to lie. Looking at the technical state of stuff on console, it's like that PC port's either going to be an absolute mess or it's easily going to be the best way to play. And I'm just tracking.
At this point, I'm just like, all my friends are going on PC, so I'll just fucking go on PC because I want to play with them on it. It sucks. There's no crossplay on this thing because why would anyone want crossplay? Yes, but I guess I'll just bite the bullet. I'll get on PC and come what may, because who knows? I guess.
I've survived Elden Ring on PC. I can
pretty much. That's how I feel at the moment.
So we'll hopefully be able to have a chance to talk about that next week, as well as all the other March releases and going into April, all this exciting stuff to look forward to. All the news that we talked about is up on the website, as well as a lot of the features and reviews that we talked about last week. This includes like Triangle Strategy, like Elden Ring. We do have James's preview for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, all up on the site. You can follow us on any of the social channels. Just search for RPG Set on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast, hopefully talking about Stranger of Paradise and whatever else comes out that we can't anticipate. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and we will talk to you then.
Media.Vision or Dev Shark, let's go!